Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's girlfriend gets caught doing some things she has no business doing. Yesterday, I read through my girlfriend's messages with her friend group, and it's gross. How do I go about bringing this up? For some context, my girlfriend and I both play video games a lot. She recently got a VR headset and has made a friend group through some of the games she plays, consisting of both men and women. I would like to say that I have no problem with her having friends that are either male or female. But after hearing her conversations she's had with her friends online, which includes flirting with people I don't even know, whose intentions I don't know, I started getting a sour taste in my mouth whenever she's talking to them. I also know of a couple people that have admitted to one person in the group that they have a type of cyber crush on her. Fast forward to the other day when we're both in bed for the night, ready to sleep. She ignores my attempts at conversation solely due to the fact that she's busy texting her friends. It keeps me up and it hurts that I get ignored, but I just roll over and go to sleep. This takes us to last night. She's texting one particular guy that she plays with pretty consistently for a couple hours after I try to go to bed. And as we're both people that don't sleep without background audio, I usually throw a podcast or a TV show on when we go to bed. Before being in this friend group, she never had a problem with what I put on, but last night she put her AirPods in and fell asleep. When she was asleep, I had a gut feeling that she was in a call with that guy, so I checked and she was. I got a sick feeling in my stomach due to how we met. We met online through mutual friends and ended up dating before moving in together, and how I've had to deal with my mom getting cheated on when I was younger. I don't know what to do next. I know I'll probably get a lot of just talk to her, but I need to know if I'm valid in my feelings or if I'm overreacting. In terms of flirting, I mean she's telling this guy to get on his knees and beg for her to watch something. In response to only girls get to call her good girl, she says, with exceptions, winky face, talking about her love languages, talking about kissing other guys, etc. The bad news, she's checked out of your relationship and was never ready for one in the first place. The good news, you're 21, the world is your oyster, and being single in your early 20s is really fun. Not overreacting. She's texting someone else for hours? She's falling asleep on the phone with someone else? It's almost like you're the side piece now. Your girlfriend is cheating on you emotionally. The only reason it's not physical yet is because of distance. I guarantee you if these guys were within easy driving distance, she'd already have hooked up with some of them. Am I the jerk for throwing my pregnant sister-in-law's groceries away? My brother and his wife, Laura, who is 7 months pregnant, are staying with us for a week or so since he's interviewing for jobs in the city my family and I are in. My kids love having their aunt and uncle around and everything's been great. Yesterday, Laura went out and came back with groceries. I thanked her, but told her that we don't expect them to do this. The kitchen is stocked, and that we're just enjoying having them here. She said that she wanted to, and that most were cravings she's been having. I started helping her unload the bags, and noticed that some of the snacks were with peanuts, cookies, crackers, peanut butter, even some sort of cake fusion. It all made me uneasy because she knows my oldest son, who's 8, is extremely allergic. I don't keep anything of the kind in our home because we've had an incident where he was younger and we almost lost him. I didn't want to be rude, but I told her that I'm not comfortable with having that stuff in the house. She told me that she would be careful, that she wouldn't eat it around him or his siblings, and that she'd clean up after herself, that she was having intense cravings and she needs them. Look, I've had 4 kids, and I kind of get where she's coming from, although I never had to have something, but every woman is different. I made sure my son knew not to touch any of it and to leave her alone when she's eating them. That was that. Yesterday, I woke up early to make breakfast, and I opened the fridge, only to be greeted by strawberries dipped in peanut butter, left out without a container to chill. The peanut butter jar wasn't sealed properly next to them, and there were sandwiches on a plate because she likes the bread cold and soggy. I was upset. I read enough about airborne contamination to know that you can't really determine it, but I wasn't risking it. I grabbed a bag and started throwing everything in it. Our groceries, hers. I didn't care. I was going to take the bag, drive to a shelter, and let them know the situation. Laura woke up while I was on my rampage, came down, and asked, all upset, what I was doing. I was snippy with her, and I didn't try to hide it. We got into an argument, with her defensively saying that I can't do this, that the baby needs it, and that it's cruel to put a pregnant woman through unsatisfied cravings. I told her bluntly that I don't give a single hoot. If she can't keep her word, then I won't either, and that she'll live without her craving. My son can't say the same with his allergy. She went back upstairs, packed her bag, and came back down, grabbed the bag of food, and left in a huff. My brother was at his interview and called me half an hour later to ask me what happened. He was upset with his wife, but also with me because nothing happened, and at the end of the day, my son is fine. I told my husband when he came back from work, and he's completely on my side. Am I the jerk? Mini update. Like some people had predicted in the comments, Laura did go straight to my family and started complaining. She hadn't twisted anything, told them the full honest story, and my mother was livid. She called me panting like she ran a marathon after she went off on Laura to make sure my son was okay, so I can only imagine the riot act she read her. Apparently, even my stepdad gave Laura one of his disapproving frowns. My brother came back in the evening to get his stuff since Laura had only packed hers for some reason. He did apologize for what she did, said that he'll have a chat with her once she's calmed down. He told me that she's been crying since she left my mom's house and that she now feels unwelcome and unloved in our family, and he blames me for it. My husband butted in and told him that it's enough, that whatever she's feeling doesn't cover half of what we felt, and that she needs to get over herself, that I've been scrubbing the house from top to bottom for hours because of her actions. I did get panicky, and I went on to deep clean the whole house, especially the kitchen. But anyway, my brother left after he said that there's no leveling with us when we're being this stubborn. Now that I've had time to get out of the state I was in, I do feel bad that she's distressed and feels unwelcome in our family. That was never my goal. I've been debating sending her an apology, not for my actions because I stand by them, but for the way that I went about it. I shouldn't have allowed this stuff in our house in the first place, and I could have been calmer about it after I opened the fridge. Not the jerk. If your sister-in-law doesn't get to eat her pregnancy cravings, she and her baby will be just fine. If your son is exposed to his allergen, he could get very sick or even pass. Sister-in-law is a selfish jerk for thinking that her snacks were somehow more important than the life of your son. Update 2 weeks later. So after my mom went off on Laura and my brother yelled at my husband and I took the advice I was given and sent them a long text, which ended up being a bit of a ramble about everything, how messed up the situation is, how we're disgusted by their stance, and how we'll be going low contact until we feel ready to be around them again. That was the day after my brother packed his bags and left. I was left on red, and I thought that was that until a few days ago when I got a call from Laura. I thought about not answering it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, Laura tried to make awkward small talk, but I think she sensed I wasn't in the mood and got right to it. She apologized about her behavior, said she had no excuse other than her hormones, and we ended up having a long chat about everything. By the end of it, I actually felt better and like we could get past it and work on our relationship. She also mentioned that she would still like for my family and I to come to her birthday dinner. It wasn't going to happen in a restaurant anymore. I guess the hotel stay ended up costing them a lot, as some of you predicted, and that it was going to be at their house instead. I told her that I'll talk with my husband and get back to her. I also got a text from my brother apologizing and saying he was just trying to protect and stand by his wife. It was too soon to start mending things, as my husband had pointed out, but he left the choice up to me, and I honestly believed her apology because she had never acted like that before, and she seemed actually ashamed of herself. Anyway, my sister, who was also apologized to because she also went off on her, and my parents also got an apology, were also invited, but my sister's kids wanted a cousin's sleepover instead of going with us, so after talking it over with my sister, we agreed for them to have one at my house. My babysitters of a year are my next-door neighbors. They're sweet and responsible 16-year-old twins who live with their single mom. They usually team up and tackle on my kids on date nights. There's a reason I'm mentioning this. With my sisters added 2 kids to the mix, I asked their mom if she was free to join their duo, and she agreed. So I called Laura and told her that Richard and I are coming. When we got to their house, Laura greeted my husband and I at the door. We handed her the gift and went in, but she seemed puzzled that we didn't have a trail of kids with us, so I reminded her that it's just us adults tonight. Same thing happened when my sister and her husband walked in. Dinner was awkward. No matter how much we tried to lighten up the mood, and the conversation was stilted at best, but I thought it was at least a step forward. Laura asked this time about why the kids weren't with us, that she had made special food for them. I never mentioned the kids when I got back to her, just my husband and I, but I felt like it was my fault that I didn't clarify, so I apologized for it and thanked them for thinking of them. My sister chimed in that her kids and mine were having a cousin sleepover tonight, and how she was excited about our soon-to-be nephew to join them when he's here and older. Laura looked at her with a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm sure he'll be best friends with his cousins," as in my kids, and his step-cousins, as in my sisters. This really set me off because we don't use step anything with the kids, but I bit my tongue. For context, my sister is technically my stepsister. I know I used stepdad in my first post, I usually call him by his first name. I consider him a parental figure since he raised me since I was 10, but I had a dad, and the title will always be his. My sister gave her a hurt look, but it was my brother who nudged his wife with a "what are you doing" look. A few minutes went by again with eating and light conversation before Laura asked about our kids, mainly who was watching them since all 4 parents are here. I told her that my neighbor and her daughters are babysitting, to which she laughed at and joked about how incompetent the girls and their mom must be to need all 3 of them to wrangle the kids. Also for context, I have 4 kids. I'm biased and like to think they're well behaved, but they're somewhat too much for one person to handle, even me, and I'm the one that brought them into this world. Add my sister's 2 kids, and it's a lot for 2 teenagers to handle, even just for a few hours. We left at 7 and said we'd be back at 11. It has absolutely nothing to do with the girls whom my kids adore or their mom, who is kind as can be. Before I could retort anything, my mom stepped in with one of her smiles and told Laura that it's so kind of her to offer her own competence and watch the kids next time. That shut her up real fast. After that, dinner was even more awkward until we cleared the table and Laura brought out dessert while my brother got the cake from the fridge. Here's where I lost the last of my remaining brain cells. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I saw my husband carrying my bag and trying to usher me out of the front door to leave. He looked upset, and I was beyond confused and obviously resisted because, yes, the dinner is a train wreck, but let me at least say goodbye and give a lame excuse for our departure. When my husband tried to literally carry me out, I knew something was wrong, and after a couple of tries, I darted past him back to the dining room. Laura's now ready dessert table consisted of peanut butter cake pops, peanut butter pie, peanut butter cookies, peanut butter brownies, and to top it all off, a peanut butter birthday cake that my brother brought in and was sniffing at with a horrified look. Laura then gave me a big smile and said loudly to my family, "I thought I should at least get to have my cravings on my birthday. Get your fill before she throws these out too." I honestly thought for a second that my sister was going to tackle her, and I wasn't that far behind her because all I could think about was the fact that she thought my kids were coming and she planned this accordingly. I felt so guilty for allowing this stuff in our house the last time, and if my sister's kids hadn't wanted to sleep over, I was going to walk my son into a danger a second time. I lost it. Without thinking about my actions, I grabbed Laura's head and pushed her straight into the cake. I held her there for as long as I could while she flailed and told her that I hope she chokes on her cravings before I let her go. I honestly wanted to go for the pie too, but I had embarrassed myself enough by acting like that in the first place. So I told my brother that I'm done with both him and his wife, and if they try to contact me or my family again, I'm filing for a protective order. Then I let my husband lead me out. My sister was cackling as she followed us with her husband, but our parents stayed back. I heard Laura screaming at us, but my stepdad raised his voice, which shut her down. I got a lot of jokes about his frown on my first post, but the man is as stoic as they come. Him showing any emotion is a big deal. I remember that his frown alone growing up was enough to literally stop my sister and I in our tracks, because we knew if he gave us one that we messed up. I haven't asked my mom what happened after we left because I can't handle any more heartache from my brother or his actions. I don't think it was the update that everyone wanted, but I'm done with both of them. Even though my brother looked like he had no idea, the stuff was in his house, happening under his roof. I'm sad I won't be in my nephew's life, and my kids won't get to know the new cousin they've been waiting for. But I'd rather cry over that than over my son passing. I don't expect anyone to be kind in the comments. I'm 32. I shouldn't have been so naive, and I know I shouldn't have reacted like that, and I'm going to be dealing with that with my therapist, along with the guilt I'm feeling. But please take it easy on me. I'm still shaken up. I'm also looking into family therapy for my kids so they can better process not having their uncle and aunt around after them having been a close presence in their lives. Am I the jerk for bringing my own popcorn to the movies because my mom eats like a vacuum cleaner? So my mom, 54 female, and I, 24 female, have this tradition where we go to the movies once a month. It's fun, and I love that I get to spend quality time with her, but there's this one major issue. My mom is a popcorn monster. The second the movie starts, she's inhaling the popcorn like she hasn't eaten in days. She's a pretty healthy lady, watches her diet and everything. She just loves popcorn. She finishes the entire bucket before the previews are done, and guess who gets none? Me. I tried telling her to leave some for me as well because I'd love to have a bite or two as well, and she just shrugs and says, "You should eat faster." This time, I decided to take the matters into my own hands, so I snuck in a separate bag of popcorn just for myself to enjoy. We got to the theater, and she grabbed her bucket. We waited until the lights dimmed, and naturally, she started ravishing her popcorn. I started eating mine as well. Halfway through the movie, Mom caught me munching on my popcorn, and I swear if looks could kill. She gave me this look, leaned over and whispered, "Did you seriously bring your own popcorn?" And I just nodded and kept eating. After the movie was done, she told me that what I did was very selfish. It would have been nice to share with her and that I ruined her experience. I was a bit shocked. It's just popcorn after all, and she never leaves me any. Here's where I might be the jerk. I told her she eats popcorn like a vacuum cleaner and that she always eats her portion and mine as well, and she still expects me to leave her some if I bring my own. How is that fair? She doesn't want to go to the movies with me anymore now. Am I the jerk for bringing my own popcorn because my mom can't control herself? Update. I just had a nice heart-to-heart talk with her. After my mom called me selfish and said I had ruined our movie night tradition by bringing my own popcorn, I knew something deeper must be going on. No one actually sane reacts like that for such a small thing. I sat her down, and first of all, I just told her that I'm very sorry if I upset her in any way and that I'd like to know what's actually going on and why did she react like that over something so small. She tried to brush it off at first by telling me that I'm overthinking things and that I should just let it be. But one thing about me is that I'm really, really stubborn, so of course I didn't. After some time, she opened up. It turns out she's been carrying a lot of heavy stuff for a while and I had no idea. She admitted she's struggling with feelings of loneliness and depression, and she's tried to contact a therapist, but she's too scared to start. Since I moved out in 2022, she's had a hard time adjusting to an empty house. Dad passed in 2005, and she's felt isolated. Our movie nights were something she looked forward to, a small tradition that made her feel more connected to me and less alone. Also, she apparently has some health issues that she didn't want to share because she doesn't want to burden me with them, which is mind-blowing to me. She's been going through tests, waiting on results, and the meds are also messing with her, making her feel annoyed really easily, etc. All of this stress, combined with how much she misses having me around, made her lash out at something as small as popcorn, because in that moment, it felt like I was pulling away from the last bit of normal we had together. She panicked, got really angry out of nowhere, and lashed out. She also said that popcorn is her comfort food, and she has it every time she's alone because it makes her feel better, because she remembers our movie nights. But still, she also said it might be stress eating, something she finds comfort in because it soothes her. She also apologized for the "you should eat faster" thing, because that was just out of pocket and a bit mean. I've had my ups and downs with Mom, but we settled on still going to the movies, and while it's very expensive, we'll buy 2 portions, and she can't touch mine. She actually can, of course. She knows she needs to control herself for her own good, and I'll try finding her a good therapist, and if it helps, I'll even go with her. Also, someone in the comments suggested I should buy her a popcorn machine for Christmas, and I'll definitely be doing that. Karen demands I have a baby for her. My oldest sister is 40. She always wanted to be a mom, but some complications meant she was never able to be a biological mom. In her 20s, she met a widower with kids and married him, admitting her intention was to become a mom through them. Her stepkids were never okay with her like that, and for the last 16 years, she has struggled to come to terms with the fact that not one of them even considers her their mom or embraces her like she would like them to. This is something she always complains about when she's around our family, especially me and our sisters. 3 years ago, one of my sisters was expecting her 3rd kid, and she was going through a lot and struggling with her pregnancy. She wasn't sure they could handle a 3rd kid and worried about financials because her husband had a new job that paid less than his old one. The old one folded a few months before that, and they had already made adjustments to factor in the new household budget. My oldest sister harassed her for months about letting her adopt the baby, going as far as going to our brother-in-law about it and telling him she wanted the baby and he should talk our sister into it. It never happened, but it did harm her relationship with the rest of the family. I gave birth to my 2nd kid in November and had a procedure to make sure I had no more kids. Both my pregnancies have been awful on my body, and I didn't want to risk putting myself through that again. My sister brought this up last week. She said I was selfish to sterilize myself before offering to be a surrogate for her, and that I could have given her my youngest to adopt at the very least. I told her I wanted my kids, so I would never give one up like that. She said her dreams of motherhood were important. I told her nobody owed her motherhood though, and the way she was carrying on was wrong and concerning, and she had brushed aside our concerns before, but she needed to get some help because she can't keep demanding others give her their kids. She flipped out and started screaming that as her family, we should want to help her reach her dream of motherhood, and we should be more understanding because she gets crap from her stepkids and doesn't get any of the joy the rest of us have. We've been sensitive for years. We encouraged her to speak to someone countless times, but she keeps going on like this and it's concerning. Her marriage has felt the strain of it all, but I know I might have been harsh saying we didn't owe her motherhood, which is why I'm here. Am I the jerk? I get that being a parent, especially a mother in this case, is important to some people, and to not fulfill that dream is something to genuinely grieve. However, after being raised by people who felt that they were owed kids, it caused a lot of generational issues for us. We weren't seen as people as much as toys to show off, and as with most toys, we continued to lose value over time when we were no longer new. Honestly, the way she's acting is making me grateful she can't have kids. I can only imagine the pressure, codependency, and general issues a kid would face with her attitude. My mom wasn't nearly this bad, but I still essentially was her parent, and guess who I no longer talk to? Wow. First off, your sister needs a lot of help. She is obsessed with having kids, and she's turning into someone most people wouldn't even want to be around. She needs therapy and quite possibly medication. Second, not the jerk. You actually put it very well. Nobody is owed motherhood, and your sister is wrong to expect others to hand it to her. Your words were a bit blunt, but I have the feeling you have tried to be nice about the whole thing for a long time, and the comment about you being a surrogate for her was the last straw. It's not up to you to make her a mom. Good luck to your family, particularly her husband. Am I the jerk for not telling my cousin my fiance works at the same office as her husband? I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has, be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we do make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who's a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people. Not too long ago, Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees, and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name, and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face-to-face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months was brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry and he has a good job too. But I'll admit, I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and wants to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation then. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously, I knew what she meant, and it was just another dig, but I said bye and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious. Well, as much as one can be through text, that I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office, and Chris made a comment. Tell Kat, OP and me don't need help, but thanks for offering. Henry's really embarrassed, and so is Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose, and if she knew, she'd never have made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to our family group chat we have, saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said what we did was petty and wrong. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk, and I love the way you handled it. It was better than the way I would have handled it, which would have been to publicly and loudly ask her husband how he liked working for my husband. But I have a habit of making things worse. It's not my best trait. I wonder why Henry didn't recognize Chris at the family function. I'd notice if my boss was somewhere, even if there were like 200 or more attendees. Or is Henry so junior an engineer that he hasn't even met the heads of the department? OP. They hadn't met face to face yet. Chris is a co-head, and Henry's mainly been dealing with one of the other bosses so far. Not the jerk. Kat is embarrassed and also annoyed she can't brag and one-up you, so she's telling you off as a way to clamor back power on you. Stand your ground and don't apologize. You can say, I understand you're embarrassed, but I didn't do anything wrong. If you didn't talk down to people, this would never be an issue. Ignore all the whining and people she enlists to complain on her behalf. They are all wrong. Am I the jerk for taking a DNA test? My mother and I have a low-contact relationship for a host of reasons, so for me, this wasn't a thing to worry about, but maybe I'm wrong. When I was a kid, she refused to tell me who my biological father was, or to tell me why she wouldn't tell me. My Aunt P, her elder sister, told me when I was 18 that my father was a bad person. At the time, I accepted that as an answer since my mother has always, despite claiming to love me to my stepdad and his family, made it clear how much she didn't want me around. But my mother lied about things, not just major things, mundane things like who made a dish. Fast forward a couple of decades, and this topic came up again at a family function because my stepdad's sister Im has never liked my mom, and since Im was never told the story my mother's side of the family was told, she was under the impression that I was to be told who he was once I was an adult. She asked about it, and when I told her I didn't know, she confronted my mother, who gave me a name, Tom Smith, and the school he went to in the 70s. It wasn't exactly the kind of info that helps you find anyone, so last year I took one of those corporate DNA tests. I didn't expect much, but I wanted to know if I had any half-siblings. I found a whole family this year, definitely not named Smith, including my deceased father's siblings. His name and other info doesn't match anything my mother told me, but DNA doesn't lie. My mother is remembered by them as the other woman, who, when my father refused to leave his wife, my mother told him she wasn't going to have me. Shortly after that argument, he passed in an accident. I look just like him and his twin sister T, who has a picture of him with my mother as well as his journal, which I'm still reading, but it pretty much details what sounds like a swinger couple figuring out that what they were doing was fun, but maybe too risky. Now I know the real reason things were the way they are, and for right now, that's enough for me. I'm still processing, especially since my mother has presented herself as a hyper-conservative Catholic for most of my life. But my new aunt is angry because she worked at the same company with my mother about 15 years ago, and my mother never told her I existed. She called my parents' house. They still have a listed landline, and my mother's first name is very unique, and left a long, angry message on the voicemail that my stepdad heard. Apparently, there were a lot of lies told to him about my mother's life before they got together and during their marriage. Now she's angry with me for causing problems, and I am definitely not feeling guilty. However, my aunt says I should have just left it alone after all of this. My aunt says I should have just left it alone after all this time. So, am I the jerk for wanting to know my father's identity and inadvertently outing her past as the other woman? Not the jerk. If she had been open with you, you might never have gone looking. You had a right to know about your background. It's hard to even imagine being in such a situation. Who wouldn't want to know their own background? Not the jerk. From your post, it sounds like you are a full adult, so you have the right to know who your father is. Other people in your life made a choice to hide who he was from you, and that made you curious. Not the jerk. Your mother's relationship with your father's family is not something she gets to manage on your behalf now that you're a grown adult, and her relationship with your stepfather is not your responsibility to manage for her. Her lies and failure to think through the possible long-term consequences of anything here are why things are so messy now. And she knew darn well there was no neat way out of any of this, or she wouldn't have tried so hard to put off the inevitable drama. None of that is on you. Forget everything about this place? A malicious compliance over a decade in the making. Many years ago, I worked for a little company. CEO was a jerk of the first order. We needed image hosting for a large client account, and CEO was unwilling to pay for maybe $2,000 to $3,000 in annual image hosting fees at the time, even though the company made millions off of the deal. Me being an enterprising individual, I figured out a way to host the images on Flickr. I saved the login information in a physical notebook and kept informing them that this is a house of cards and we really need to switch to a professional service. Several months later, I was promoted and asked for a raise to go along with my promotion. CEO said no. All promotions and raises required CEO sign-off. I tried negotiating, but CEO said no and to leave if I didn't like it. So I left. CEO told me to forget everything related to the job here, and he'd sue me if I did anything with the client accounts afterwards, such as sabotage or steal clients. I told him I'm leaving all my knowledge behind in the notebook in my final email to him. My manager and BCC'd my personal email. In this email, a full inventory of what I left behind, invoices, contracts, etc., including this entry. Personal notebook, account notes and reference material, including image hosting logins for blank accounts, keep for reference. Recently, I received a professional networking site message from CEO telling me to help them with my old accounts or he'd sue me. Apparently, Flickr changed their terms of service and the images were deleted. In over 10 years, nobody updated any documentation or the image hosting. Nobody bothered checking the email account either. That was used to log into Flickr account. I told him that I could not help. Per his request, I forgot everything I knew about his company, and anything I knew was in that notebook I left him over 10 years ago. Seriously though, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Technical details from that long ago, I just laugh. Am I the jerk for confronting my brother's friend about boundaries and embarrassing him in front of my family? I'm 18, female. My little brother and his friend, who are both 13, are really close. You never see one without the other. In fact, his friend practically lives with us now because he prefers being around our family. At first, we weren't opposed to having him around all the time. He's a good kid, but he gradually became more clingy and rude these past few months. Now he gets upset when the two aren't together 24/7, to the point where he'll get fidgety when my brother leaves him alone for more than a day. And when my brother spends time with people other than him, he'll shut down and go quiet until the other friends are gone. One time, he switched it up and went too far by bullying one of my brother's friends. He teased her relentlessly and stole her hat, refusing to give it back. Our mom had to intervene and the girl left early. He used to be really nice to my brother, always being supportive and putting him first, but now he resorts to making fun of him with sarcastic comments that are very humorless and cruel. My brother's spoken up about how his friend's change in behavior makes him uncomfortable and wishes he'd stop acting strange. Yesterday, I overheard the two of them talking, and everything that came out of his friend's mouth was a mean jab at my brother's expense. This was the last straw for me, so I pulled his friend aside and told him his obsession with my brother is unhealthy, and he needs to stop acting this way and start respecting my brother's boundaries, or he won't be allowed to step foot in our house again. This is where I feel like I might be the jerk. He clearly wasn't expecting to be told off like that. He looked around the room at everyone staring at him, obviously embarrassed, and his eyes began to water. He said sorry, then walked out the front door. I feel bad for making him cry, but I don't regret embarrassing him in front of my family. It seemed to get the point across effectively because today he hasn't said anything mean or negative towards my brother. My brother thanked me for intervening, but says I should have told him off in private instead of humiliating him like that. My parents also think I could have handled it better. So, am I the jerk here? You stood up for your brother when the need arose. Calling someone out on their behavior is far more effective when you do it immediately. While in some ways it's unfortunate that it happened with other people around, it sounds like the kid needed to learn his lesson, and it's more important that your brother saw you standing up for him. Getting the timing wrong doesn't make you a jerk. You did exactly what a big sister should do. Edit. As the big sister, you probably have a place of respect in the friend's eyes. Being told off by you would really sting. That also puts you in a position to positively reinforce good behavior. It's worth spending a bit of time with them both within those boundaries you've reminded the friend of. It only worked because other people were around. When he looked around that room and saw that nobody disagreed with what OP said, he had no choice but to listen. Not the jerk, because your brother did need someone to stick up for him, but you probably could have handled it better. Remember that this is a kid. There seem to be some red flags here. The friend prefers to stay with your family and seems very insecure about keeping your brother as his friend. That kind of behavior doesn't come out of nowhere. Do you know anything about his home life? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how she treated her little brother's friend or not? Please let us know. No, I think she rocks. Sometimes bullies get what's coming to them. Am I the jerk for giving false info to my boss's spy he put in my work crew, which resulted in him getting fired? Hello all, I hope you're doing well. So I had been having issues with a coworker for well over a month, and my boss refused to do anything. I can't get into specifics because of the rules of this subreddit, but let's just say anywhere else he would have been fired the first day I said something. Well, I went above my boss to his boss to get it settled after texting my boss every single day for him to come talk to him or to do something. My boss's boss handled it that same night, and honestly, I didn't want him fired, I just wanted the issues to stop. Well, my boss took things personally and chewed me out for well over 30 minutes on me going above his head. Well, after the other guy was let go, my boss added someone else to work with us and said to me that he knows this guy is solid, so if there are any problems, then he knows I'm the one causing issues. Well, that was red flag number 1 with this guy. Red flag number 2 was when he said, I'm not into drama, but your coworker was a nice guy, and you had no right to go above boss's head to get him fired. The final red flag was when our boss's boss just showed up randomly to chat with me because the principal of the school I work at asked him to come talk to me because my work tripled and I wasn't able to keep up. Well, this new guy said his phone was shut off, But all of a sudden, as soon as he heard that the big boss was here, he had to leave to make a phone call. So now on to what false info I gave him. So I get to work about 20 to 30 minutes early every day, and I used to just clock in and work till the end of my 8-hour shift, and that ticked off my boss, so I stopped doing it. Well, after the new guy got back from his phone call, he wanted to know when we clocked in, so I lied and told him I clocked in 30 minutes early and that I'm out of here in an hour. Well, the new guy got another phone call all of a sudden, even though his phone was shut off, and he left. I know now that he was talking to our boss because our boss showed up exactly 1 hour later and said, "I need to talk to you." He proceeded to tell me that I knew not to clock in early and that I had been warned not to do that. I told him to look at my time card, and sure enough, I clocked in right on time. I thanked him for giving me an excuse to contact his boss again and went back to work for my final 15 minutes, and the new guy was let go for lying to our boss. Am I the jerk in this situation? Not the jerk. You didn't get him fired. You didn't lie about him. You lied about you. He exposed himself by reporting you and your management fired him. It seems like they're all completely out of line. It's probably time to look for another job. He was mostly hired to find a reason to get OP fired. Too bad that OP isn't stupid. Not the jerk. And the problem here is your immediate supervisor. Don't know what's going on with him, but the fact that he didn't address the situation with the previous man and then sent a spy in to try and catch you out so he could fire you, that's a huge red flag. OP, I know, and I'm looking for other employment. Tried to quit. So, dear readers, for those that don't know, I was a front desk agent at a short yard by Harriet. Key word being was. A few weeks ago, I finally decided I'd had enough. New GM was moving in, and my AGM, who started at the same time as me, was moving on. I was completely burned out on customer service. It's been a tough couple years to be in the hospitality industry. Long hours, getting called in on days off, people not knowing how to behave. I'm exhausted. I put in my notice the day before my weekend, ready to be done. The next day, I get a call pretty early in the morning. I answered, thinking it's one of the places I've applied for. I have literally over a dozen interviews set up for the next couple days, so I wasn't worried about finding something. But it's not any of them. It's the director of sales at my current place of work. She asks if I'm really leaving and then says they don't want to lose me. I'm the top associate when it comes to Bonvoy signups and new sales leads, plus I know the front desk inside and out. I told her I was burned out on front desk and I wasn't going to stay. She tells me that I don't need to stay at the front desk. They're hiring a sales coordinator. Better pay, 9 to 5 hours, I get my own desk. I don't have to wear the god-awful short yard uniform. I told her I'd think about it and let her know. When I next go into work, I'm talking it over with some of my coworkers. What do I find out? The head chef, who's worked basically every position in the hotel and knows it better than anyone, he kept things running during lockdown, has been offered the AGM position. Over the moon is an understatement for how I was feeling. The new GM, who I had been iffy about, calls me into his office and tells me that they don't want to lose talent. He really wants me to stay. So here we are, dear readers. I get to stay at a property I love with a team I love, but I'm officially done at the front desk on Monday. I still have stories to post, and I'm sure this new position will have plenty of interesting tales. On to the next adventure. My Karen mother moves in with me, chaos ensues. At the beginning of lockdowns here in Germany, my mother came to me saying I should let her live with me in my house because, wait for it, I am your mother. Well, I let her move into the granny apartment. It has a separate entrance and has 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen/dining room, and living room. While she slept in the bedroom in the apartment, she used the main kitchen to cook her meals, but refused to cook shared meals, used the main living room to watch TV, basically acted as if she owned the house. Any of my complaints she likewise dismissed. I am your mother. It all came to a head when I was working on a computer in the living room. There was a lull while the system setup was doing its thing, so I went to the kitchen to brew tea and have a snack. During this time, my mother went into the living room to watch TV, but I had been listening to Vivaldi's 4 Seasons, so she started pulling power plugs in an attempt to shut off the music. One of the first plugs she pulled was, of course, the computer I had been working on. When I came back to the kitchen, she rejected any fault for it. According to her, it was clearly my fault because she had to shut off the music to watch TV. So why would she feel free to shut off my music in my house? Not to mention that I had to start over the system setup. Well, because I am your mother. I countered, and my mother is a guest in my house, so until you behave like a guest, you better go to your apartment. She didn't like being treated like that one bit. Well, she went to her apartment, then left. I went to a hardware store and bought some new locks. Until then, the keys for the main door also worked for the apartment door and vice versa. The inside door connecting the apartment and the main house didn't have a lock at all. So yes, I locked her out of the main part of the house. And then the phone calls started. First, my brother, to whom I suggested he take her in. The house he lives in alone is even larger than mine. Then my older sister, who has 2 spare rooms in her and her husband's condo since her kids moved out long ago, and who didn't like the suggestion she should take our mother in either. My sister's daughter was somewhat surprised when I explained to her that the house belongs to me and not to her grandmother. Her brother only called to get my confirmation about that. My brother's son was actually on my side, but warned me about my mother planning something. So a few days later, while running errands, I got a call from the hardware store from which I bought the new locks. They told me that the police had called them to send someone to open the house. What had my mother done? She called the police for help because her son had locked her out of her house. When the officers at my house confronted me with that, I simply told them to try her key at the door on the side. Obviously, they hadn't done that before. Then they wanted proof that it was actually I who owned the house. Oddly enough, the copies of the deed I had at home were nowhere to be found, so I called my attorney and he sent one of his partners with new copies. He also brought eviction papers telling me to consider it. I simply asked for a pen. A few days later, my mother moved in with my brother. Brother, older sister, and her husband helped her with her stuff. Brother made a last effort to make me change my mind. My sister merely treated me with contempt. Brother-in-law told me quietly he vetoed our mother moving in with them before my sister even made the suggestion. But this still isn't the end of it. The police officers are pressing charges for falsely reporting a crime, me locking her out. Everyone and their brother has called me to take back the charges. I hadn't pressed them in the first place. It's out of my hands. To tell the police that it's all just a misunderstanding, or at least put in a good word for her. Why? Of course, because she is your mother. Impatient Karen loses her job. For those not in the know, a mystery shopper is a person assigned by the company to make random, unannounced inspections with regards to customer service and, in general, the well-being of the company employees and the store. Also, it is customary for these mystery shoppers to blend in with everyday customers and not bring attention to themselves in a way that can be misconstrued as just another obnoxious and rude customer, i.e., act like a jerk, get treated like a jerk. This lady didn't get that memo. One day around lunchtime, my boss was in the back having her lunch. I was out on the shop floor and serving customers, an unusually high amount, but nothing that I couldn't handle on my own since my coworker wasn't going to be in later. Then in walks Karen. As I was serving the queue of customers, I half-heartedly said, "Hi, welcome to..." I was hungry while still serving and ringing through items. Karen, and under her breath, "It's polite to make eye contact." Alarm bells. She hums and haws while I'm making my way cautiously and correctly through the remaining customers. All the while she's making daggers and eventually storms off in a huff, looking around. Like I can come away from paying customers just to help her. As the last 2 customers make their way to the till, she joins the queue with a whole 2 items with an audible, "Oh, for goodness sake." The customer I'm serving looks at me with a "what the heck" expression and I nod. Not even 1 minute in. This is ridiculous. Finalizing the payment before moving on to the next customer, the till decides to freeze and it takes a few minutes for it to reboot. I make my apologies and the customer I'm serving is fine with it, along with the customer behind. Louder, Karen. "Oh, for goodness sake, the service in this establishment," she was posh, "is absolutely ridiculous." I had enough. With my best, but upset, customer service voice and smile, I said, "Me, listen, as you can clearly see, I am dealing with other customers. I am the only staff member on the floor as my boss is at lunch. The till has decided to not play nice, and to be perfectly honest with you, I am well within my rights to refuse you service and ask you to leave as your attitude absolutely stinks. Karen. What? You can't talk to me that way. Don't you know who I am? Me. I really don't care, to be honest. Now I am once again asking you to leave. She storms off in the foulest mood you've ever seen. The customer I am serving says, "Thank goodness you said something. I was ready to lose it on her." We both laugh, and I finish both services and thank them for their patience. They both worked in another store where we were based. My boss has finally finished her lunch at this point and has come through the front. Boss. Oh, I meant to say there's going to be a mystery shopper in at some point. Don't know who, but please be on your best behavior. Oh my. I quickly tell her what happened and explained that I was busy, but not too busy that I needed her, and the conversations as it happened. And lo and behold, just as I'm finished telling her, in walks the regional manager for the company. Regional manager. OP, back office, now. I'm done for. Now, knowing that the RM has a tendency to be a hothead in these situations, I was really nervous at this point. Thankfully, I've had a reasonably good working relationship with him up until this point, so it really could go anyway. Regional manager, unusually calm. What happened? I explained everything, from the moment she entered to the moment she stormed off, almost taking the door with her, and the fact that I had witnesses that worked in the immediate vicinity. The full shebang. Regional manager sighs and nods. I'm finally glad that someone else has the courage to stand up to my wife. What? The look on my face said it all, and he starts to laugh. Please accept my apologies, and I will let your boss know that there's not to be any repercussions for this. And I think it's time to let my wife know it's time to find more suitable employment. Me, speechless, and mutters, Thanks. He hands me a 20-pound gift card for the mall's cafe and said lunch was on him. The best coffee and chicken bacon club sandwich I ever had. Am I the jerk for no longer letting my mother-in-law watch my daughter after she kept throwing away the food I sent? I'm a widower and have a 6-year-old daughter who's a very picky eater and got worse after her mother's passing. She loved her mother's cooking and refused to eat anything that isn't made by her mother. I decided to learn to cook her favorite meals that my wife used to cook, and my daughter has been loving my version of her mother's cooking. I recently started working a new job, and my mother-in-law started watching my daughter 3 days a week. I have my sister helping, so I'm doing good. I prepare meals for my daughter to take with her to Grandparent's house so my mother-in-law won't have to worry about what my daughter can and cannot eat. My mother-in-law complained about the meals I sent and said I needed to encourage my daughter to eat from a variety of dishes. I already explained how my daughter is when it comes to food and that I'm already learning new dishes every week, so it's not repetitive. So last week, I discovered that my daughter has been eating only snacks for days at her grandparents' house. She told me this, and I was confused. I asked about the meals I send with her, and she said that her grandma would take them from her hand once I leave, throw them in the trash can, then tell her to eat dishes she makes. My daughter refused and has been only eating snacks at that house. I was enraged. I confronted my mother-in-law, and she said that she didn't find that me sending meals with my daughter was the right thing to do, and wanted her granddaughter to eat her cooking and was upset that she refused. She said it's my fault her granddaughter doesn't want to eat certain foods and that I was spoiling her rotten with this behavior. I mentioned to her that the meals she threw away were my wife's recipes and that I struggle so hard to provide those meals, as well as taking time to learn to cook them. She stated I wasn't doing a good job parenting and needed to get a grip because she's feeling concerned about how spoiled my daughter is being because of me. Eventually, I told her that I won't let her watch my daughter from now on and decided to ask my sister for help. Father-in-law and sister-in-law kept on calling me cruel for not letting them see their granddaughter, and father-in-law said that I was overreacting and promised to convince his wife to let my daughter eat what she wants as long as she visits, but I refuse to discuss it because right now, I really don't take what they say at face value. Neighbors kept parking in our space. I froze them out. This happened around 20 years ago. Our family owned 2 apartment buildings, 3 units each. We lived in 2 of them, rented out the other 4. There's nothing but these 3 flats lining both sides of the road for about a mile. Not all have parking. On the side streets are houses and very little street parking. We had more land than most of these units since it was also our home. So we had parking for around 16 cars. Everything was fine for literally decades. Then cars started appearing in our parking lot that were not our tenants. I blocked one in one day, went outside to see this jerk driving through our bushes and cutting across the yard to get out. I called the cops, nothing they could do. So I called a tow company and I had them put up signs. We'd have to call them to have a car towed. The signs seemed to work. No more random cars. Until New Year's Eve one year. I arrive home and every space is filled. There are even cars on the street blocking in the other cars. I'm beyond upset. I call the tow company. They can't do anything for a few hours because they're so busy. We're in the Chicago suburbs. It's below 0 out. I have an idea. I dig out the lawn sprinklers and hoses. I run one hose inside to the laundry room faucet and turn on the hot water. This way, the hose and sprinklers won't ice up, but the cars and ground sure did. 3 sprinklers moved every half hour or so, for almost 5 hours. Every car, every square inch of the parking lot, the street by the cars, encased in ice. I made a point to spray ice in the locks, between the window seals and glass, in the grills, put away the sprinklers and hoses, went to bed. 4 a.m., furious pounding on the doors, doorbells ringing nonstop. We just smiled and called the cops, waited until they arrived and went outside. Cops were holding back laughter. These people were told to park here by their friend who owned an apartment several buildings away, the same idiot who drove over our bushes. I pointed to the tow sign and told the people to move their cars or get towed. In our town, cops can ticket on private property with the owner's permission, so all cars were ticketed. They were also towed since nobody could get in their vehicles. Wish we had it on video. Am I the jerk for telling my fiance she's not the breadwinner if she's not paying the bills? My fiance and I moved in together shortly before we got engaged. Before we did, we discussed how we'd split the housework and bills, 50-50 down the middle with some wiggle room for when the other needs help. When we moved, it was into her parents' 2-story garage that they converted into basically an apartment. They offered a low rent, $700 total, and pitch in for the electric and internet so we could save money for our own place and wedding. My fiance earns more than me, and that's cool. I'm proud of her. Before we moved in together, it always seemed like she was living paycheck to paycheck, and I chalked it up to the apartment she had prior having insane high rent. She stuck to the 50-50 arrangement at first concerning bills, but she missed often, and I had to remind her about it. Post-engagement, she's back to living paycheck to paycheck, either missing or very late with her part of the rent monthly. The 2 utilities we pay, groceries, late with her car payment. Her parents have talked to me multiple times about rent, and I've covered her missing portion to get us caught up, and then tried talking to her. It always turns into her saying we should just move if her parents are going to hound us. I told her we're lucky it's her parents, because anywhere else they would have kicked us out by now. On top of that, I pay my own bills, do about 65% of the housework, arrange and pay for most of our dates and vacations, gifts for her, pay most towards our pets. I've suggested a financial coach, but what kicks me is whenever we're around others, she boasts about being the breadwinner since she earns more. Goes on about the stress of being the main source of income, all the hours she has to work to pay all of our bills. I was letting it slide until a few days ago when we were at a get-together. She and her sister started up again about her being the breadwinner. Her sister said something to the effect of her ex-boyfriend had a hard time being with someone who earned more, and my fiance went, "Good thing OP doesn't mind me bringing home the pay." I told her just because she earns more doesn't make her the breadwinner when she blows it all on herself, and I'm paying most of the bills. She's embarrassed now and keeps saying I made her look bad, and I got her in trouble with her parents because they want to see what she spends her money on each month. But I don't think I did anything wrong. Am I the jerk? Update. 11 last night, I was ready to just postpone the engagement. As of this morning, after a lot of talking and things coming to light, we are broken up. Thank you everyone for your responses and input, especially those who encouraged looking deeper. Quick summary. She felt a joint account would impede her financial independence. She insisted we could afford her purchases based off of our total income. Her parents were under the impression she was also paying off my student loans, my car, my phone, and paying for our vacations. She didn't get evicted from her last apartment, but she was late with her rent often enough that they weren't going to renew her lease, so she didn't suggest us moving to a bigger apartment at her building. Biggest nope, I'm out. The monthly take-home amount she told me was what she earned before wage garnishment kicked in addition to mass debt. She's been doing some online stuff to make up for the money she lost due to that. Yes, I got the ring back. Again, thank you everyone, but I will not be responding to any more comments. I'm going to take some time for myself and get things figured out. Not the jerk. Though you're focusing on the wrong problem. Forget perception. You need to sort out her financial irresponsibility before you marry, or things aren't going to get better. OP. I have put the brakes on any more wedding planning until she either sees a financial coach or therapist to figure out what's up with her way of doing things. What does she spend it all on? OP. I know some of what she spends it on. Going out for lunch, different hair and skin products, accessories for her car, house decor, pretty much anything she sees that she feels she needs to have right then and there. Yup, that's a problem. That's not going to get better with time. I think you taking a stand about financial education is a wise move. I agree. Before I was able to get my ADHD under control, I would blow lots of money on the absolutely dumbest things because I felt like I needed it. Looking back, it was purely a serotonin boost to make myself feel better about whatever I was dealing with at the time. I'm gonna hop on here and give you insight as someone who married into that exact situation. My ex-husband financially ruined us. By the time we divorced, I was over 12 grand in debt on one credit card alone. He made over $120,000 a year and couldn't help pay bills. At the time, I made $32,000 a year. You can see how this would be stressful. It caused us to absolutely tear each other apart. Took me years to straighten my finances out. Never again. Never ever marry someone who has zero money management skills. It sounds like you're very aware and making the right decisions. If she absolutely cannot stop spending the way she is, you may need to cut her loose. Money is one of the biggest factors in divorce. Can absolutely second this. My ex-husband was horrendous with money. Add that to his inability to not get fired from every job he had due to his attitude problem, it left me to cover everything. When he did get a job, instead of working to pay off the debts we'd accumulated in the 9 months he had been unemployed, he'd spend all his money on expensive stuff we just didn't need. Bigger TVs, game consoles, holidays. Then he'd overspend and not have enough left to pay the mortgage, so again, I had to cover it. Out of fear of losing our house, I had to keep borrowing money just to keep us above water, and by the time we separated, I had 25,000 pounds of debt in my name. He had debts even higher than mine, but honestly, I don't know what he was spending it on. I found out months later that he had also had friends take out massive loans for him, over 20,000 pounds over the years, and I have absolutely no idea where that money went. I still got 18,000 pounds to pay off. It's going to take me years. Never again. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his fiance? Please let us know. If you understand how money works, don't marry someone who doesn't. You want me to search for non-existent products? Got it. 3 years ago, I was working in a popular local cafe in the middle of a big city. Obviously, there were a lot of customers during rush hours, and of course, the usual Karens. At the time of this story, I was just finishing my training to be fully hired. The manager, Steve, was an utterly obnoxious person who was overall very disturbing. He'd tell us to do something, then change his mind while we were halfway through it. Anyways, he wasn't exactly competent, but we were low on staff and the owner desperately needed a manager. So this one day, I'm just clocking in and I see my first clients are a bunch of kids and their Karen of a mom. Yes, she had the haircut. The following conversation ensued. Karen, what are your muffin flavors? Me, we have, and I name all the muffin flavors. Karen interrupts me. No, I'll just take one of those special edition muffins. Points to the back of the kitchen, like she's expecting me to make them for her. Me, oh, sorry, those are limited edition muffins. We don't have them anymore. Karen rolls her eyes. Yeah, I know. Just give me 5 of them. Me, a bit louder, thinking she didn't hear me. We don't have those anymore, ma'am. I'm sorry. Just give me them. What's wrong with you? Get me your manager. Now, at this point, I'm pretty upset because this woman is screaming at the top of her lungs and gathering all of the attention towards her. So I do as she asked, and I get her the manager. Steve looks mad as soon as I disturb him. He goes to see the Karen and comes back to me. Steve,
Just give her the muffins, now.
Me, we don't have any of those muffins left. I already explained that to her.
There are some left. Just find them.
Me, where are they? I'm pretty positive we don't have any left. Steve,
I don't care about your opinion. Just go find them already. Ask others to help you find them if you're that dumb. And don't go back to that lady or any other clients until you find those muffins.
Me, thinking about what he just said. Okay, sir, I'll give her the muffins. Steve,
that's better.
So I go and try to find them everywhere in the store. Of course, there are none left, as the muffins are seasonal items, and since none arrived in stock, there are no special edition muffins left. Cue malicious compliance. Since Steve told me to not go back to that lady or any other clients until I found the muffins, I do exactly that. Since he also told me to ask others for help, I make sure to let every employee know my desperate need for help in finding the muffins. In the end, since no one liked Steve anyways, we all went searching for the muffins. For several hours, clients kept pouring in until one of them dared to ask what we were all doing running around. I calmly explained that our manager sent us searching for something and we couldn't work until we found it. I insisted that our hands were tied and we couldn't serve them until our manager said so. Every single client went banging on Steve's door demanding to talk to him. As soon as he opened the door, everyone started yelling at him to let the employees serve them. Visibly confused by so many people in the cafe and in front of him, he shouted my name. I wasn't allowed to stop searching, so I replied by yelling back too. He eventually came in front of me and asked me what was going on. The following conversation was priceless. Me, oh, I was just searching for the muffins. Steve, looking like he was about to pass out.
What? Why?
Me, well, you asked me to find them or to get help if needed. You insisted I shouldn't go serve anyone until I find them. Since we never found them, we never got to work again. Steve, realizing he just lost hours of profits.
Seriously? Go back to work, now.
Me, with a smug look on my face. But we didn't find the muffins yet, sir. Would you like to search with us? Steve went ballistic on me, saying that this was insubordination, that I had the IQ of a slug, etc. Meanwhile, the Karen sent multiple complaints to the owner about the manager. At the end of the day, the owner personally came in to announce to Steve that he was fired and replaced by one of my coworkers. We never had any other seasonal muffins after that. Speaking of muffins, what's your favorite flavor muffin of all time? Please let us know. I gotta go with the double chocolate, bruh. Yes. Am I the jerk for canceling a girl's appointment the day of her baby shower? I, female 17, am a part-time braider and I take my job very seriously because this is how I make money and this is what I want to do for my career. I work from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays and 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekends. School is my first priority, and on weekends, enjoying my weekend is important too. I have my policy on my booking link, so before you even book an appointment, you have to read my policy. A couple policies I have are no show equals no further appointments, 30 minutes grace period. After that, your appointment will be canceled. No extra people, etc., etc. Most of my clients respect my rules and always come through. This girl, Tiffany, booked an appointment with me for June 4th at 3 p.m. She was getting a wig installed, no braid down, just application, so I had another client right after her for braids. If you wear braids or do braids, you know braids can take hours. Braids already take hours, plus she booked a takedown and shampoo, so that's extra time. It came time for Tiffany's appointment, so I was setting everything up for her, and 3 p.m. came and she wasn't there. I have a 30-minute grace period, so I wasn't worried. After 15 minutes, I texted her and asked was she still coming and never received a text back. It was going on 3:45, so I just took it as a no-show and put all my stuff away and started getting the stuff ready for my next client. I texted Tiffany and told her her appointment was canceled, but she could come pick up her wig. It was customized and everything for free. All she needed was someone else to install it for her. I never received a text back. My next client came around 4:30 and I started working on her head. Maybe around 5:30ish, my mom called me and told me I had a client at the door. I work out of my house, and to come see what she was getting at because she was cutting up outside. I stopped in the middle of my client's hair to go see who it was, and it was Tiffany. She was losing it on me, saying I ruined her baby shower and why was her appointment canceled. So I explained to her my policy and that she wasn't just 30 minutes late or even an hour late. She was 2 hours late, and I couldn't do her hair anymore. I gave her a wig and sent her on her way. She started talking about me on social media, and everybody in the comments are dragging me down, saying I'm unprofessional and to not book with me when I've been nothing but professional. If you can't respect me and my rules, you just won't get your hair done by me. There's plenty of other hairstylists where we stay. My mom said I'm not wrong, but I'm getting a lot of messages, and she's getting a lot of comments on her post talking about how unprofessional I'm being when I did nothing but respect her and her time. I've even had a client cancel an appointment after seeing her post. I'm losing money and clients over this petty mess, and I know I'm not wrong. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She was 2 hours late for her appointment. You don't exist to fix whatever works best for her schedule or work at her beck and call. I would be inclined to make a comment responding to her. Dear Tiffany, I do my best to accommodate clients in their busy schedules. However, clients are made aware prior to booking their appointment of my policy concerning appointment cancellation for those who are more than half an hour late to their appointment's time. You were over 2 hours late and did not respond to my attempt to reach you. I had to attend to clients whose appointments were after yours. As a show of good faith, I provided you with your wig already styled at no cost. I am disappointed you were left with such a negative impression of my business despite my best attempts to work with you. Don't forget to show screenshots of you trying to text her about her appointment along with timestamps. If people are your clients, they should know your policy. Not the jerk. She was 2 hours late. There is no professional who takes clients 2 hours late without issues. She didn't even reach out to tell you that she was delayed. As a fellow hairstylist, absolutely not the jerk. Your clients also need to respect your time and your business, and it's not your problem when she A, didn't communicate, and B, was 2 hours late. Forget that noise. I'm so sorry it's negatively affecting your business, but you don't have to bend over backwards to accommodate people who show you no respect. Absolutely not. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Tiffany? Please let us know. Tiffany? I think I had breakfast with her once. How do I tell my parents they still owe me $10,000? Ever since I could start making money, I started saving. By the time I was 16 years old, I had bought my first car, which was $1,700, with cash, and I still had $1,500 in a savings account with a full-time job and a second part-time job. My parents had full access to this account because I was still a minor. When I was 17, my family took a trip that my parents couldn't afford. They asked me if they could use some of my savings and said they would pay me back. I agreed. Little did I know that they would use that as permission to take money out regularly. Hundreds of dollars every month for 3 years. When I finally realized, I stopped putting money in that account, opened a checking account, and a new savings account at a different bank. The last time they took money out was August of last year. I was 20 at the time. I worked for them as well, and many times I would just not get paid. I always kept track of that, and I still know the exact amount they missed. I always kept track of how much I should have had, in writing, every check, every payment, and every withdrawal I made. I knew exactly how much I should have had in my account, and it was well over $10,000. And with that money, I wanted a new car. $18,000 was the cost, and by selling my other car, I had enough and then some, or so I thought. When I went to check out how much was in my first savings account, it was empty. I had nothing in the account. There should have been $10,000 or more, and it was empty. I went straight to my parents and told them I wanted this new vehicle and asked them to help me pay for it because they still owed me money. They were reluctant at first and denied owing me so much, but I practically begged for them to help me. They finally did and paid the remainder of my work money, $3,000, and they bought my old car from me for $5,000. I paid the rest with the money from my new savings account. I moved out last October, and when I brought up the money they owed me, I was told they don't owe me more than $1,000 because they paid for my phone and car insurance while I was living with them, and they helped pay for my newest car. We never had rules about my bills. They just paid for it without a word. I'm okay with deducting that from the total, but I'd rather not. It was money I made fairly, and they never told me I had to pay them anything, and I did offer. As for the car, they only paid off my work money, not even the money they took from me. In total, they owe me over $10,000. I have no idea how to bring this up and how I could even win this battle. I'm looking to buy a house and have a wedding soon. That extra money would be extremely helpful, and our relationship is still rocky since I moved out. I don't want to make things worse, but it is a lot of money that I kind of need. I would bet that since they probably set it up and their name was on the account, they were legally able to take money out. It depends on if you really want or need to have a relationship with them. Pushing it will probably end the relationship and you will still be out of the money. Good luck on whatever you decide. I agree with him. Suing will destroy your relationship with your parents. I would confront them with your pile of evidence. Realize your parents are both bad with money and don't have good boundaries. This will never change. It's who they are. The issue of them owing you $10,000 may never get resolved. It's a hard day when you realize mom and dad are not all of what you thought or wanted or needed. Can you live with this? I think you should call this one a win. You know never to loan them money in the future, no matter what they promise, and that they aren't above stealing from you. Keep your stuff protected and take a loss on what they still owe you. A lawsuit is the only real answer, and that's not worth the $5,000-ish they owe you, especially since you seem to be really, really good with money. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you sue your parents for the $10,000 they owed you or not? Please let us know. I'd consider doing what my friend Lizzie did. They made a song about her. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that putting our son to bed was now her job and then moving my bed into a separate room? The situation is basically that I, 35 male, and my wife, 29 female, have a 2-year-old son. She is a stay-at-home mom and I work full-time, usually from 6:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. or so. Being a toddler, my son should generally be sleeping between 11 and 14 hours a day. Therefore, what my wife and I aim for is for him to wake up at 7 a.m., do all the typical daily activities, take a nap starting between 1:30 p.m. and 2 p.m. for 2 hours, and then go to bed again at 8 p.m. This would give him a good 13 hours of sleep a day. I'm typically in charge of getting him to sleep at night, while she obviously puts him down for his afternoon nap. For the past several months, my wife has gotten incredibly lazy with putting him to bed. I understand that it's not always easy, but she has essentially worked out a new system. She waits for him to be utterly exhausted at about 4 p.m., puts him in bed, and then wakes him up between 6 and as late as 6:30. Therefore, when I try to get him to go to bed between 8 and 9, he's not tired at all. It's basically a horrible wrestling match to get him to go to sleep as he shrieks and bites and doesn't want to sleep because he's simply not tired. It takes me up to 2.5 hours to get him to go to sleep, which is horribly unfun for both of us. Last night, I finally told my wife that until she fixes his sleep schedule, I'm not going to clean up her mess anymore. I moved my bed into another room, locked the door, and went to bed as she put him to sleep. This morning, she was exhausted from doing so, and in a terrible mood because apparently having to do what I've been doing for months was bad. She told me that I need to be more active in helping out with him, and I responded that I'll happily do so once she actually gets him down for his nap at a reasonable time. I honestly don't think I'm out of line here, but am I being a jerk? Not the jerk. Toddler is a difficult age. Their needs are constantly changing. He might not be tired at 1:30 to 2 anymore, but your wife is still trying to get him down, which he can't take much longer if he's not tired, as you well know from the nighttime struggles. Sounds like he's starting to transition out of the daily nap phase. It's a hard milestone on the parents because toddler will get tired without a nap, but too close to bedtime, so you either have to deal with a cranky toddler in the evenings until this passes, or do an earlier bedtime, which will cause the kiddo to get up early. Please be patient with each other. Raising a kid is hard on both parents. This is the answer. Skip the daytime nap and put him to bed earlier in the evening. Napping isn't helping anymore, and lots of kids grow out of daytime naps, especially when home all day versus childcare centers. You're the jerk. Your kid is having some typical sleep struggles. Your wife isn't being lazy with his naps. It sounds like she's having a hard time getting him to actually go to sleep. You're blaming her instead of acting like a parent and trying to work out a solution together. If anyone's being lazy here, it's you. Right? It seems like kids go through nap struggles all the time. I imagine this kid throws the same tantrum at 1:30 that he's doing at 8, hence the pushed back nap time. Kids aren't clocks, sir. Seems extremely unfair to call her lazy when I can only imagine she is trying. You're the jerk. Parenting requires constant communication. To lock her out at 8 p.m. is wild. Let's not even mention that you really only see your kid between the hours of 5:30 to 8 p.m., which isn't fair division of labor if she's a stay-at-home mom. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for blowing up at my fiance for giving my future mother-in-law our wedding coordinator's number? My fiance, Edgar, is my future mother-in-law's only son. She's so attached to him and is excited for our wedding. We've had a relatively long engagement and we're finally getting married soon. I've been trying to keep her involved as much as possible, but she just kept getting further with her expectations. She'd email me lists of questions about 5 or 6 times a week. She'd ask me the same questions over and over, expecting a different answer. When she doesn't get a different answer, my future father-in-law will call me and start pushing the same thing. It's made me anxious and stressed out. Edgar says that she just wants to make sure the wedding is flawless and felt like some of the choices I made during wedding planning were poor. She went to our former wedding coordinator and bombarded her with tens of questions and even called her many times trying to change things we've already picked out, saying all choices made were based on zero experience and wrong. She even pretended to be me at some point. This caused a huge fight between us, and I ended up starting all over with a new wedding coordinator and completely getting future mother-in-law out of wedding planning process. Future mother-in-law lashed out at me for it, and Edgar said that I was being too hard on his mom. Last week, I found out that he went against my wishes and gave his mom our wedding coordinator contact info, and his mom ended up finding out about all of our plans. I blew up at him and told him he violated my boundaries and betrayed my trust. He said it was no big deal and that his mom genuinely means no harm, even if her and I don't agree most of the time. We had an argument and I went to stay with my dad for a few days. Edgar kept texting saying I was overreacting and that I was being too hard on him and his mom. Am I overreacting? Note, she isn't contributing anything to the wedding except her input and experience. My dad is the one paying for the wedding. He never tried to give me an opinion or suggest anything regarding the wedding. He just told me to have the wedding as I had always envisioned it. Welcome to your new life. Expect her to help organizing every aspect of her son's life in the future. If you're lucky, you might get to have some small bit of input as a concession, but it looks as if you are marrying 2 people. This comment 100%. Tip of the iceberg, OP. Yes, this is the trailer. Do you really want to see this film? If you're not prepared to leave, and he's not prepared to learn to set boundaries or understand why that's important, people do learn to live with spouses like this. They cope with having their wishes disrespected, their lives controlled. They learn to lie. They learn to evade. They learn to lean more heavily on their social support systems, to make their friends a refuge from their romantic relationship and normalize the idea that a romantic relationship should be this stifling, stressful thing that requires a refuge. It's a pretty common predicament, and I'm sure you could make a long list of people in your life who have made it, if you sat down and thought about it. Before you commit to that life, sit down and think about all the huge decisions that come up in the course of a marriage, ones where you now know your own wishes about your own life would be disregarded. Your kids, their health care, their education, financial issues like who works, whose career gets prioritized, major purchases, budgets. Consider too that you're not just making this decision for you. If you're bringing kids into this dynamic, it will cast a long shadow over their lives. You will want to ask them to be your confidants and co-conspirators at a young age because you entered a marriage where you can't communicate directly with your spouse. They will resent that, but still internalize that dishonesty and disrespect are central components of family life and have dysfunctional romantic relationships of their own. And that's without even getting into whatever decisions mother-in-law wants to make about their upbringing, ones you'll have to either accept or lie convincingly about and get your kids to do the same. It's not the worst life in the world, plenty of people do it, but make the decision with clear eyes. Is it just me or do weddings seem to bring out the worst in people? Am I the jerk for embarrassing a customer who refused to get out of my checkout line? I, 20 male, work part-time at my dad's grocery store. Usually if it gets too busy, we open up the express lane for customers that are buying 12 items or less. Of course, we get those customers that don't bother to read the 2 big signs right at checkout that say this is for 12 items or less, and they try to ignore other workers until they put everything on the conveyor belt. I usually tell them to get out of the line and refuse to check out their groceries so they move somewhere else. Not always. I'd say for me, there's been like 2 times where this happens. Yesterday, this one guy had a whole cart full of groceries. I was scanning items from the lady in front of him, but said out loud that this is the express lane and he's gonna have to go to another line. He completely ignored me. Called him again to say the same thing, and he was nodding at me, but still taking everything out of his cart. So I already knew he was trying to be slick, ignoring me, so I ended up scanning his stuff anyways. After finishing with the lady in front of him, again I told him to take his stuff to the other line. He gets mad at me, saying to just do it already, but I'm upset. there were already a couple of people that came in to wait in line behind him. He told me he's had a long day and to just please not make it harder on him and to do my job. So in that moment, I just decided forget it. I closed that register and told everyone behind him to move to the next line so I could help them there. So he was basically left there alone, but I could hear him quietly saying something, putting everything back in the cart again to go to another line. And obviously, everyone was watching him too. One of my coworkers said he was talking a lot of crap for me being so unprofessional, and he didn't deserve to be treated that way in front of everyone. He spoke with one of the managers, but they basically told him the same thing, that he wasn't supposed to be in that line in the first place. However, the reason I'm asking if I'm the jerk is because one of my coworkers said that I should have just let him do it, since the whole thing really bothered the guy. My dad doesn't take crap from customers, and he'll back up another employee if they need to. So that's the attitude I have about it too. But since it did make someone else's day harder, since he said he was already having a bad day, does that make me a jerk since I really could have let it slide, but I didn't? From a customer point of view, I applaud you, and I would have paid extra just to watch you put him in his place. It annoys me to no end that customers ignore what is going on around them, and considering those waiting in lines behind him would have been quietly upset at him for being so special. Good on you. Great job. Well done. I caught my fiancé using my debit card without my permission to purchase stuff on Amazon for his brother. My fiancé's brother, Chris, moved to Mississippi from our hometown 2 years ago to be with some girl he met on the internet. Chris has always been the type to make terrible life choices, and my fiancé is always the one who bails him out, with the exception of my future mother-in-law. My fiancé does this because he has survivor's guilt. They lived with their father growing up, and their father hated Chris for whatever reason, but loved my fiancé, Heath, so Heath saw a lot. Yes, they both got out, but Chris was ruined, refuses therapy, gets into trouble constantly, etc. He's 33 and my fiancé is 28. So when Chris left to go to Mississippi, I was working at the hospital 70 hours a week while Heath stayed home with the kids. He had no income, but he was a stay-at-home dad, and this worked for us. However, I started noticing money going missing quite often, and when I checked the bank statements, Heath handled them because he was an accountant for a couple years and better at budgeting. I noticed a ton of Amazon purchases and money transfers through Facebook Pay. When I confronted him, he told me his brother and this chick didn't work out, so he was helping him with like hotel stays, food, essentials, etc. It's important to note that during this time, I was upset because of how much money was being spent and limited him on what he could send his brother a month because it's not my responsibility. So I didn't make him stop, but I limited him. Well, budget cuts went through my hospital 2 months ago and I was cut, along with 340 other employees. 4 wings were closed down, mine being one of them, so I'm currently unemployed. Heath works constantly now. I also got my taxes back. We have 3 kids. I got back a big chunk of money. Last night, Chris calls and Heath shuts the bedroom door. I assumed because the kids were being loud, but I walked in roughly 10 minutes later and see Heath has my debit card in hand, typing in the info on Amazon to buy his brother over $400 worth of crap. Books, board games, playing cards, etc. Nothing he needed. I ripped the debit card out of his hand and asked him what on earth he was doing, and he just looks at me like I'm a jerk and asks why I had the nerve to do that. I told him I'm not fishing out $400 worth of crap to his brother, and he goes, "My brother has nothing to do, and this is the only way I can help," and said since I got a ton of money, I should be willing to help, especially considering he gets his paycheck Friday and can make up for it. I still said no. He's now saying I'm a controlling jerk. Not the jerk. I'd be getting a new card and lock down the old one. Change passwords, everything. If your fiancé can't be responsible, then leave. I would stop using a debit card entirely. Credit cards offer much better protection against fraudulent purchases. Yeah, that's because you're giving the bank the powers to turn your life upside down. Not the jerk. You need to have a hard talk with your husband. He needs to stop this behavior or you walk. That money could have been put towards your kid's future instead of giving it to your brother-in-law to set on fire. If he can't see the error in his ways, it's a marriage ender. He's literally taking from his own kids to give to his brother. This is 100% how she needs to put it when talking to him about the issue. That $400 you spent on your brother's non-essential entertainment could have been $133 in a college fund for each of your kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiancé? Please let us know. Nothing's worse than people who try to spend your money on things you don't approve of without your permission. Am I the jerk for leaving a wedding early as a bridesmaid and causing the wedding to get charged a $500 cleanup fee? I, Jane, 21 female, was one of Vanessa's 3 bridesmaids, and her wedding was held at a remote lodge venue up on a mountain. When everyone got to the lodge, we did a dry run of the ceremony and surveyed the place. I assumed that the men would go to their cabin and the women would go to ours, and we'd relax before the wedding. Instead, the men immediately headed to the liquor store, and the groom and bride's mothers began ordering the bridesmaids to move furniture into place. That night, the women did everything from dragging 250 chairs out of the shed and setting them up, to hauling furniture down 2 flights of stairs and positioning it in other places. Because I was the tallest and strongest person in the group, it was mostly on me to haul the larger pieces around, and the mother and mother-in-law of the bride largely stood around talking about details with her. I asked repeatedly if the groom and groomsmen could be called to help, but was told that we didn't need to bother them, and that they're out unwinding before the big day. The father of the bride has a heart condition, and the father-in-law was much older and walking with a cane, so he couldn't help out either. At the end of 2 very sweaty hours, I had splinters, blisters, I was covered in sweat, but everything set up. During the wedding, I learned that the bride and groom were trying to avoid all of the setup and takedown fees from the venue. The groom's mother condescendingly patted me on the arm and said that everything would be okay because Jane's our workhorse. After a bit more conversation, I found that the plan was for the bride and groom to leave and then the bridesmaids and groomsmen to stick around doing everything from cleaning up trash to moving the furniture back where we'd gotten it. Toward the end of the party, almost everyone had left, and I realized that 2 of the groomsmen were so drunk that they were going to be useless, and it would again be on the bridesmaids to clean up and put all of the furniture back up the stairs. I went to tell the bride goodbye. Judging from her slightly panicked expression and, "Oh, you're leaving? You're leaving now?" questions, I realized that she definitely expected me to move the furniture back, but didn't want to say anything while surrounded by people. So I left, and my phone blew up as I was driving back down the mountain. The other bridesmaids were texting me, and then Vanessa's mother left me an angry voicemail about how I was bailing on my duties as a bridesmaid. The next day, I woke up to a massive paragraph from Vanessa that said it was my fault that they had to pay the $500 cleanup fee because they weren't able to get everything put back in time. So for this, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If the wedding party is going to be doing this kind of work, you should have been asked in advance. You can't demand your wedding party do heavy labor like that because you want to be a cheapskate. You can ask, but you can't just expect and demand. Dear Vanessa, I'm so disappointed that you expected me to clean up without even asking me. The groomsmen were not even asked to help set up, and clearly no one asked them to stay sober enough to clean up, which makes me think that you expected me but no one else to clean up. That's really just hurtful. I thought I was your friend, and feeling used really hurts. Am I the jerk for lashing out at my ex-husband for wanting to move away with his girlfriend and my kids? I'm female 35, and my ex-husband, male 34, we divorced 2 years ago. We have 2 kids together who are 7 and 5. We decided to not have the court involved in custody at all, with us mutual agreeing that the kids would stay with him and his girlfriend in our old house together on the weekdays and attend school in the suburbs. After we divorced, I moved to the city, about 30 minutes away, and picked them up every Friday night and spend the weekends with them. For the past 2 years, co-parenting has run pretty smoothly. We occasionally do things with our kids, have special events, or during their birthdays. Sometimes his girlfriend comes along, and we're able to have a cordial relationship with one another. Okay, so this is where the dilemma begins. Last Friday, when I came to pick up the kids, he invites me inside to talk. Basically, he says that since he's probably going to work from home indefinitely, he wants to move to his family property with his girlfriend and the kids 3 hours away in rural Wisconsin. He plans on taking the kids out of public school and have his girlfriend and his sister, who currently lives there, homeschool them. This was a plan he had originally mentioned to me back when we were together, but I had reservations moving to a rural town with my career and being close to good school districts. I am also strongly against homeschooling and believe that it does not prepare kids for proper socialization skills in the future. I want an honest evaluation of whether I'm the jerk in this situation, so I will tell you exactly how it went. As soon as I hear this, I lash out at him, saying that if he wanted to move there so badly, he should just start a new family and leave me with the kids instead. I also tell him that this is a sick attempt to take the kids away from me. At this point, I'm enraged, so I start yelling and ask him if his girlfriend and his sister are even qualified to teach them properly, how they're going to socialize and make friends, and why he would want to change things all of a sudden when our co-parenting was going so well. All he has to say is, "I knew you were going to react this way." I told him that I will lawyer up and make it unbelievably hard for him to go through with this. I took the kids for my weekend with them, barely unable to compose myself for most of the time. I feel awful for having my kids see me in a state like this, but I want them to grow up knowing that I will fight for them. I took them back to their dad on Monday, and I received a text from him today saying, "Can you please stop manipulating the kids and thinking I'm some evil monster?" Am I the jerk for lashing out in this situation? I asked my kids how they would feel about moving with their dad and his girlfriend away from me, and both of them said they didn't want to. Edit. Consulted a lawyer this morning. More context. The reason my ex-husband has the kids on the weekdays is so they can remain in the same school as they used to. School ends on 6/17, then it switches to our summer schedule, where I'll have them on weekdays and he'll have them on the weekends. Not the jerk. These are your kids too, and I can't blame you for reacting like you did. Get a good lawyer, ASAP. Not the jerk. This is what parenting agreements are for. It's great you guys were amicable before, but that time has passed and circumstances changed. Moving your kids far away from you to a rural and isolate place is pretty upsetting for anyone, even if you were still in that marriage. While I understand he may want to give them more of an idyllic outdoor childhood in life, your concerns are totally valid and more realistic. Time to go to court. Maybe they can buy a summer home there. You're the jerk for involving your kids at all. Your anger with their father is not their burden, it's yours. Your reaction was unacceptable. If you disagree with his proposal, handle it rationally, and under no circumstance should you be bad-mouthing their father to them. If they went home under the impression that he was some kind of monster because you're upset with him, then you messed up. You moved away as well, without asking permission, I'm sure. You can keep the same arrangement you have now, even if they move 3 hours away. And for the record, there's a myriad of homeschooling programs out there as well as homeschool communities where kids socialize with other kids every day. And quite honestly, they'll probably get a better education than they would in today's public schools. You went nuclear in your reaction when a rational civil conversation was possible. You're the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her ex? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for teaching a new student at my ballet class how to break in her point shoes? I, 18 female, am a professional ballet dancer. I attend classes daily 6 days out of the week. A younger student has recently joined our Saturday morning class. She's 13. I'll be honest, she's a sweet kid, but clearly one of those kids that the parents threw a tutu and shoes at and expected a star. Still though, she seemed determined to make her parents happy, so me and the older members took her under our wing and tried to help her settle in and learn as much as she could. One issue I noticed very quickly was that she couldn't get over her box. Now this could be down to poorly fitted point shoes, in which case there was nothing I could do to help right now. But I asked to see her shoes before she put them on one morning and saw that they weren't adjusted for her or broken in at all, which, ouch, no wonder she couldn't get over the box. So I helped her break them in, and which I admit is a rather intense process for people not used to it. One of our walls has dents in it from all the breaking in. I then taught her the basics of customizing them and helped her to get them as comfortable as possible for her. The class went well and she seemed far more comfortable. The following week, her mother came with her to class and went straight to me, demanding to know why I had destroyed her daughter's shoes, and didn't I know how expensive those were and how I had better replace them as she couldn't wear them. I admit I was a little dumbfounded by this and just stared at her for a bit before getting annoyed and telling her that we all break in our shoes and it's the only way to do ballet properly. And yes, I know how expensive they are, as I go through a pair of shoes each performance. I told her that she clearly knew nothing about ballet, as having unbroken in shoes was going to destroy her daughter's feet and make dancing nearly impossible, and if she was serious about it, then she has to understand that it's an expensive investment. Our ballet master then came over, demanding to know what all the noise was about. This mother then said I had ruined her daughter's shoes and how she couldn't afford to buy a new set right now, and they had needed to last her daughter at least 6 months, which good luck with that. They asked to see the shoes and laughed and tried to reassure her that they weren't destroyed, just broken in, and showed the how and why this was done. She got embarrassed and upset at this before storming off, saying our class was a joke and how we were trying to sabotage her daughter. I keep thinking about the kid's face and how mortified and upset she had been. Our ballet master insists I did nothing wrong, and it was a lesson she should know at 13 if she's serious about dancing. I wonder if she'll come back on Saturday, but I doubt it based on her mother's reaction. Maybe I would have been better pulling her mother to the side after a class and explaining what her daughter needed rather than how I did it. You're the jerk. I'm sure I'll get downvoted. My kid is 14 and a ballerina. She is a junior company member and dances at 2 studios 5 to 6 days a week. She has never, ever had to beat up a pair of pointe shoes. For reference, she will be the Silver Fairy in our Sleeping Beauty variation this weekend show. None of our company members have. The only time that needs to be done is when you need a new pair of shoes for a performance. You shouldn't have touched her shoes like that. Stepping on the box to soften it a bit, yes, but beating on a wall wasn't necessary. Also, there are professional ballerinas who have been dancing for 20 plus years who have never done what you've done to a shoe. If the shank needs to be bent, it should be warmed up with your hands and then put on the foot and bended. These ridiculous things young dancers do to their shoes are unnecessary. Ripping them open, taking out nails, cutting them, shoe hacks, shaking my head. Edit to add, we work with a master point shoe fitter. You're the jerk. Poor kid either needs some better classes or better fitted shoes because not getting on the box is not solved by breaking them in. Either she's not strong enough and needs more pre-point, or those shoes were fitted horrendously. Also, first point shoes could easily last over 6 months if she's new to it and only doing an hour a week max of bar work. Very minimal in the center, I hope. You need to learn that breaking shoes is very personal, and although you might have been trying to be a big sister and helpful, it has potentially stripped the shoes of their strength that she needed for initial support. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the kid's mom? Please let us know. I bet that place is crawling with Karens when it's time to pick the kids up. We can only get 1 hotel room now? Okay. Many years ago, I used to work for a company that did a lot of traveling. We're talking 12 to 20 hours a day in a truck with another guy, often for 5 to 10 days at a time. When we stopped at hotels, which was not every night, sometimes you slept in the truck, we would get separate hotel rooms so you would have a little bit of personal space. There was a per diem rate, and as long as we kept the hotel rooms under that rate, it never was an issue. Well, after about 15 years of this, the company suddenly decided that separate rooms was costing too much money. We had to share rooms now, regardless of the cost. The job market was fairly good at this point in time, and a few guys basically quit on the spot, and the rest complained a lot. Now, this actually created 2 forms of malicious compliance. The first one is, instead of looking for a moderately priced hotel, often the drivers would max out the accepted rate. For example, often we would drive out of major cities and stay in the suburbs where hotels and motels were cheaper. Not anymore. You'd find the really nice hotel downtown, and you'd have to pay for parking down there too for the truck, so you expense that also. Then some guys took this policy a step further and would walk into a hotel and say, "I'll give you the max rate for this room." They would chat up the hotel desk, explain the situation, and deliberately overpay for the room, spending every cent they could underneath the max rate just to cost the company a bit more money. The second bit of malicious compliance took a bit more conniving behind the scenes. Shortly after this change was made, it just so happened that the head manager of the company needed to head out on one of these trips, which was a relative rarity. Through the backdoor dealings, a few of us managed to get the most obnoxious, smelliest driver on the schedule with him. This guy was a bit of a trip. Nice guy, but didn't like to shower very often, talk your ear off, and refused to turn on the radio. Was really pretty unkempt and liked to watch certain things really loud on the TV in the hotel room. Wasn't the brightest bulb either, but was relatively competent at his job and easygoing otherwise. After sharing a hotel room with him for one night, the manager decided he needed his own hotel room. We made sure everyone in the company knew the manager could not even hack it for more than 1 day sharing a room, and this caused some pretty strong strife. A few more good guys quit. Shortly thereafter, they reinstated the policy of individual hotel rooms. But now the damage had been done. Some of the guys really liked staying downtown, so the parking fees for the trucks went up, and the overall cost of the hotel rooms went up too. Am I the jerk for bringing my baby to a child-free wedding? Here we go. My cousin lives a 6-hour drive from me and the rest of our family. A few months ago, we all drove over there for his wedding. Due to limited space, no kids were invited to the wedding except the bride's young nieces and nephews. My baby was 10 months old at the time, and I wasn't comfortable leaving him alone in an unfamiliar place with a stranger, which was a babysitter that my other cousins hired for their own kids. So I decided to bring him to the wedding. I wrote on the RSVP that I would be bringing him, but he would be sitting on my lap, and I would bring my own food for him. My cousin didn't say anything, so I assumed that he was okay with it. My baby cried at the ceremony, but I quickly took him out of the room. At the reception, I had him with me the whole time in a body carrier. He didn't make much of a fuss, and I thought everything was okay. After the wedding, my aunt, groom's mom, confronted me and told me that I was rude for bringing my baby without permission. I explained that I wrote on the RSVP what I was planning to do, but my cousin didn't object. She said that my cousin and his bride had a problem with it, but the bride didn't want to start any drama because she doesn't know me well. My other cousin's baby was 7 months old at the time, and my aunt said that he had no problem leaving his baby with the certified babysitter, and I should have done the same. And some of my cousins were upset because they thought that the groom gave me special treatment by letting me bring my baby and making them leave their kids with a babysitter. I didn't mean to start any drama. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your baby literally did the thing that the bride and groom wanted to avoid: disrupt the ceremony. You had plenty of time to find a babysitter or other family member to watch your kid while you went to the wedding, but decided that you were just above the rules. Or if you're really not comfortable leaving your baby with a sitter, just don't go to the wedding. Staying home is also an option. No, you don't understand. OP's presence is such a gift that no one minds that her baby interrupted the ceremony. People like you get on my nerves. Child-free means child-free. You do not get to change the rules of someone's wedding because you didn't want to get a babysitter. It's very entitled. You're the jerk. PSA for guests who don't understand how hotels work. A couple of nights ago, I had a late call from a lady and partner who were traveling across the Midwest states by car. They seriously underestimated the distance between towns and cities, and after a long day of driving, called my hotel to ask about availability. Because it was after 2 a.m., I, with great trepidation, quoted the rates and carefully explained that the rooms would be theirs until 11 a.m. today, so about 8 hours. At this point, I moved the phone slightly away from my ear and mentally prepared for the wailing and gnashing of teeth to come, but it didn't. Very nice lady said, "That's okay, we just need a couple hours of sleep. It's our fault for not planning our route better." I experienced shock and awe. No screaming fits, no yelling, not even the vaguest suggestion of wanting to call a manager. They arrived about 10 minutes later, walked in with smiling faces, something seldom seen in this circumstance, ID and credit card in hand. I took a moment to decide that, no, this was not me having a stroke or a fever dream. These people were actually real. I immediately upgraded them to the nicest available room, gave them a 15% discount off the price of the standard room, and quietly mentioned that I might have forgotten to lock the pool and hot tub area, and that for the next few hours I would be far too busy to monitor the pool area cameras. Nice lady's eyes widened as she signed the card, saying, "But this says we're in a family suite, and it's less money than you quoted on the phone." I simply smiled, handed her the key, and asked if she needed extra towels as the pool towels had been taken away to laundry, so there weren't any available in the pool area. Now the PSA. If you ask politely, communicate what type of room you want, calmly provide us with any special requests, high floor, ADA, pet room, or whatever you think you want or need without making us beg repeatedly for this info. If you ask instead of demanding, if you refrain from shouting, stomping your feet, or otherwise being a total jerk, if you provide your payment method and ID without us having to forcibly wrestle you to the ground and pry your wallet out of your cold hand, if you refrain from asking the NA if you woke them up. No, you did not wake us up, but you most assuredly upset us. If you follow my recommendations, then you will soon discover the amazing magical powers that all front desk associates wield, and double that for the mighty powers of the night audit person. Basically, don't be a jerk and we won't treat you like a jerk. One last thing, hotel days are not the same as calendar days. For explanation, see the thousands of other posts on this sub explaining about rolling the date and check-in and check-out times. Lock your ID away? As you wish. I'm a low runner at a supermarket that's known for not bagging your groceries for you. Due to reasons, I'm almost always on the till, so I'm experienced when it comes to the stupidity that is very common in my store's area. One thing I often do is offer customers a special trolley to help transport heavy and bulky items to and from their cars. These trolleys require the customer to temporarily hand over an ID card to the cashier as insurance, so they have to bring these relatively expensive trolleys back. Enter Karen. I don't even remember what she was buying, maybe an outside lounge or something of that like, but she was upset that I'd be taking her driver's license for 10 minutes. As I do for all customers, I tried to assure her that it would be on my person at this one register, waiting eagerly for her return from downstairs. Nope, not good enough. She demanded I locked it safely away inside the cash drawer. And that's when I realized I had a Reddit story on my hands. With a smile, I showed her as I placed her ID safely nestled among the cash bills in my personal password-protected till. You know, the one that is physically impossible to open mid-transaction. Oh, did I mention that each transaction at this time of day took about 5 minutes at least? Lo and behold, Madam Karen returns with the fabled trolley, safe and sound. Unfortunately for her, I had just started a big sale. When she came to me, palm extended and ready to receive her favorite plastic card, I took the time to pause my scanning, turn to her with full attention, and explain to her that she would have to wait until I finished serving my current customer until she could get her precious card back. Honestly, looking back, I'm not sure who was more upset, Karen or the 12 people in my line who witnessed me stop doing my job just to reassure her that I was, in fact, doing my job as she specified. Regardless, Karen took note and let me finish the sale. I took extra care with this one to make sure no products fell over or got even the slightest bit wrinkled as I rung them up. Time-consuming, yes, but isn't a job well done worth it? Am I the jerk for installing a lock on my bedroom door? I'm a college student living with my parents for the summer. Typically, I live in my own on-campus apartment, but my university closed my apartment building for sanitary reasons. I've been living here since early May and contribute. I pay a third of the rent and utilities while I also pick up the chores I used to do. One of my biggest problems living here so far is privacy. Growing up, I had no privacy from my dad. He believes since he pays the bills, he has free access to anywhere in the house. Growing up, he never knocked, would come into the bedroom while I was in it, just never let me feel any semblance of privacy. I've talked to him many times about it, but he's been refusing. The compromise we reached is that he would knock to tell me he's coming in. So he'll knock, then immediately throw the door open. I cannot stand this. So I decided that I would do something about it. My door has never been able to lock. My dad took it out when we moved to this house maybe 8 years ago. I fixed this. I found a way to change the door handle and fix the locking mechanism for my door. The next time he tried to come in, he knocked twice, then immediately tried to open the door, but he couldn't. I could hear him messing around with the handle before him asking if the door was locked. I told him I fixed the lock on the door. He started yelling at me through the door. Typical parent crap. I'm letting you live here. This is my house, and you do not lock doors in my house. This led to a massive argument through the door. The next time when I came home from work, my door is completely off the hinges. So now I have literally no privacy in my room. My mom and older sister both said I should have just learned to live with this as it's his house. Am I the jerk? Holy cow, not the jerk. I would stop giving them money. You pay rent. Of course you have a right to lock your door. If possible, find a different place to stay. Unrelated. Everyone deserves privacy, no matter how old or how much rent you pay. My oldest is 4 years old, and I always ask nicely if she's okay with me entering the room. Of course she doesn't have a lock yet for safety reasons, but she is free to close her door and tell me not to enter if she wants to be alone. Not the jerk. If you're paying rent, you're paying for your space, and thus paying for your privacy. Landlords can't just let themselves in whenever they feel like it, even though you're renting their space. I don't know how your home situation is, but it doesn't sound great. And part of me says, stop paying since he won't treat you like an adult. And the other part of me says, just keep your head down until you can move out. But privacy is not something to be earned. Your dad sounds like a controlling jerk, and I'm sorry that you have to live like that. Not the jerk. Your father is unhinged. Every single person, adult or a kid, requires some semblance of privacy. Your father is using his rule as a way to exert control over you, and this is disgusting. Try and get out of there as soon as you can. Even an apartment you can share with other people and pay for your room. You really don't want to live like this. When you do get your own place, have rules for your father. See how he likes it in your home. Furious guest demands to know why we charged his card for room damage. Duh. I work at a Motel 6, which is franchised and owned by a guy who owns around 75% of Motel 6s in our state, as well as Purple Roof Inn in this state and several neighboring states. He also owns a bunch of Super 7s as well, and our policy is to take credit cards and cash without a security deposit. Well, that might change after this, and I hope so. That policy is insane. I don't know how you can own that many hotels and not realize what a disaster policy it is to not take a security deposit with cash payments, especially considering the brands he owns. So for the past week or so, we've had some sketchy people check into a variety of rooms on various days. We still have our lockdown policies in place concerning the number of people per room. For our 2-bedrooms, it's 4 people, exception for families and their kids. Also, housekeepers will not enter stayover rooms, so we have linens, towels, etc. at the desk. So in this particular room, I've noticed that it's been having heavy traffic. For our area, that usually means crime. I keep an eye on that room throughout the week and notice that there are 5 other rooms that the people in that room seem to be familiar with. Like, I'd see them meeting in the parking lot, exchanging packages, and going in and out of each other's rooms, etc. So I inform my GM and the other shifts, and I keep my eyes on those rooms through the week. They aren't doing anything overt and are generally staying within our rooms, except for a noise complaint here and there. About 2 days before they checked out, I noticed an increase in people on bikes coming and going from those rooms with backpacks, so I'm certain that crime is involved. But as I said, they were keeping within our rules, and we've been pretty lax about occupancy cap, but not for like party rooms with 10 people. So I just note what's happening. So they check out en masse, and I come in that day and my boss is fuming. She says the main room that I initially took notice of broke the toilet. I thought, oh okay, probably the handle or maybe the toilet seat. But no, they broke the entire toilet in half. How? I do not know. The toilet tank cover was shattered in the shower. Again, I do not know how. Their headboards were busted off the wall and the water leaked into 3 adjoining rooms, not occupied, and caused damage. She then said that 2 of the other rooms were tattooing and spilled ink all over the floor and on the beds. So now those linens are trash and we cannot rent those rooms out until the flooring is replaced. One of the rooms had hair dye all over it, on the beds and the towels, so those are trash now. And the rooms were trashed, like multiple days of food containers stacked around the trash can trashed, so those rooms cannot be rented until we can clean and air them out. And of course, they smoked in all of them. My boss called the owner and he blew up on her, asking her why were we renting to people like that? Like we can tell. He asked if she got payment for the damage, and of course she didn't because they paid cash. He flipped out and she reminded him of his policy, which sort of shut him up. I walked in just as she was hanging up. So I checked the guy's stay history and he did have a card on file for one of those days, so my boss told me to run it for $500 and surprisingly it went through, so that cheered her up a bit. So a bit later on in my shift, the guy calls me screaming and asking why we charged his card. I calmly explained it was for room damages and he screams, "What damages?" Like really? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. I say the documented damage from the room that we're reporting to the police as well, and that shuts him up. He hung up on me and he hasn't called back. Of course, we didn't report anything to the police, but we did document everything. The next day, one of the people from those rooms tried to check back in, and my boss was like, nope, but pretended to get their ID for DNR. Needless to say, all those rooms are also perma DNR. My pregnant daughter demands I raise her baby for her. Hello, I am a 56-year-old mother to 33-year-old Kelly and grandmother to 16-year-old Opal. Kelly became pregnant with Opal at 16. My husband, Eddie, and I have always believed in having the right to choose. However, Kelly insisted that she wanted to keep the baby and not give her up for adoption. We helped a lot as Kelly was only 17 when Opal was born. However, Kelly would rarely help with parenting even when she was available. Even asking her to watch Opal for an hour while we ran errands was an issue. It was rare that Kelly wouldn't complain about why she had to be there to look after Opal. Kelly chose not to attend college after graduation. She had a job with a flexible schedule, yet she rarely made herself available for Opal. Kelly was only home to sleep or get dressed for some party. She also relied on us to purchase supplies and book appointments for Opal. Eddie and I would have serious talks with Kelly that she needed to step up as a parent. Kelly would only make empty promises and never follow through on them. Kelly moved out when Opal was 6. Kelly comes around maybe once a fortnight and for holidays, but Eddie and I have been the ones to raise Opal. Opal is doing extremely well. She has good friends, plays tennis, participates in volunteer projects, and plans to be a marine biologist after graduation. The school year ended for Opal last week, so we had a nice dinner to celebrate her good grades. Kelly came, along with several other family members. We were all chatting and enjoying dinner together when Kelly stood up to make an announcement. She announced to us that she was pregnant with her boyfriend's kid. We already were upset because this was supposed to be Opal's special moment, and Kelly announcing her pregnancy was completely inappropriate. Eddie and I said nothing, and Kelly started to say how she and her boyfriend were so busy with life right now. Eddie and I interrupted Kelly and told her we would have nothing to do with raising this new baby and would not be providing anything for it, supplies, childcare, etc. Kelly flipped out and an argument ensued. Kelly called us heartless and claimed that we were willing to throw our grandkid away. Eddie and I called her selfish for expecting us to raise another kid. We're too old to raise a baby. Kelly is 33 and needs to grow up. Give the baby up for adoption or be a parent and raise it yourself. Kelly left in tears. Now the family has broken into sides. The ones agreeing with Kelly say that we adopted Opal and are sending a message that we don't care about our newest grandbaby. Others are saying we should have taken her aside privately instead of shooting her down in front of everyone, and our reaction was cruel. Eddie and I feel we had to be blunt with Kelly and not sugarcoat reality. Opal likes to show us stories from here sometimes, so I thought it would be a good place to ask for a neutral perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. Opal is always able to express her feelings with me or Eddie. Opal also has a therapist who is available to speak whenever she needs it. Opal visited the therapist weekly during middle school, but now hasn't needed to see him for more than once a month. We will be taking Opal on a mall trip to make up for what happened at the celebration dinner. We spoke privately to Opal after this incident, and she knows we in no way view her as a burden. Our granddaughter is a blessing, and many of our happiest moments involved supporting Opal and watching her grow up. But Opal is 16. She doesn't need the kind of constant attention and care that a newborn baby does. We are now too old to be able to adequately raise a newborn baby, even if we wanted to. The biggest problem is that Kelly is now an adult and needs to start acting like one. Kelly is supposed to outlive us. The reality is that Eddie and I aren't going to be around for her or her kids' entire lives. It's why Kelly needs to accept that she cannot expect us to take on her responsibilities and she must be independent. Edit 2. Several people have informed me that the part where Kelly expected us to raise the baby was unclear, so I apologized for that. I thought it was self-explanatory, but realized none of you actually experienced what happened. Kelly talked about how busy she and her boyfriend were with their lives, then began to talk about how grateful she was that we would always look after our grandkids, and how since we had gained so much joy from raising Opal, we would be even happier raising this second baby. After Eddie and I called her out, Kelly confirmed that she had expected us to adopt and raise this second baby as well. Kelly said how she and her boyfriend did not have time to raise a baby, but that putting up the baby for adoption would be throwing it away. She assumed we, at almost 60 years old, would have no trouble or opposition raising a newborn baby. I think you're not the jerk. Kelly is a deadbeat mother. How does Opal feel about this? Opal was pushed aside by her own mother and ignored, and now her mom is going out and starting a new family with another guy. But what happened to Opal and her mother's relationship? It's non-existent. Kelly is a deadbeat, a nobody. I'm sorry, I know she's your daughter, but it's true. She's a horrible person. You were blunt with Kelly. Good. She deserves a kick in the behind. It was terrible for her to announce at her daughter's graduation party. Kelly is selfish, so it's only fair you give her the same horrible treatment back and call her out in front of everyone there. I hope nothing but the best for Opal. Your daughter has already completely disregarded Opal, making her, good news, I have a baby now, announcement at the end of the school year party for Opal is some more grade A trash behavior. It's not a graduation party, is it? Because that would make it even worse behavior on Kelly's part. You may not have let them know in the most civil way possible, but I'm gonna say not the jerk because of how thoroughly Kelly has made it clear her daughter doesn't matter. You may have eventually raised her enough to call it adoption, but that was never the original intent, so Kelly can buzz off. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Kelly? Please let us know. I'll never understand why deadbeats who don't want to take care of their kids keep having them. I went from school teacher to chairman of the board of a big company for the sake of revenge. When I was a tiny kid, my father was my best friend. He worked multiple jobs to support my family, all while powering his way through law school. He even built a couple of small businesses from the ground up with a couple of his friends. All while doing this, he managed to be the best dad ever, spending as much time as he could with my mother, myself, and my baby siblings. One day, we found out that he had stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind that you don't recover from. My mother and I stayed by his side all the way till it was all over. The last memory I have of my father was when he was completely immobile, practically a vegetable at this point, with tubes going in and out of his body, and me just praying that he'd still be able to remember who I was. All the guy could do was smile at me, just to let me know he still recognized his son, even if the doctor told us most of his memories would be gone. Eventually, he fell into a coma for some days before waking up to say goodbye to my mother, who was by his side when he passed. She was a housewife, so we really didn't have much to go on after his passing. Enter my grandfather. He was one of those self-centered boomer types who makes everything about himself. After my father passed, he'd used the newspaper obituary to boast about my dad's grades and achievements, which I realized seemed to be the only thing my dad was to him. Just in case you were wondering, yes, we are Asian. My mother was grieving and trying to find a way to make ends meet, and my grandfather graciously offered to help her control my father's 2 businesses to help support us. My mother agreed because she didn't have any experience. While we grew up, the 2 businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father was one of the big reasons they were thriving. Mom was in and out of multiple jobs just to keep us floating. My grandfather offered to help put me and my siblings through school. I managed to score some scholarships with some good grades growing up, so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were really glad that he helped out with my siblings. After I made it out of school, I found out that my family was broke and my 2 siblings were still making their way through medical school. My sister even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she was doing so well and that she deserved to graduate. My grandparents had cut us off because they didn't approve of the directions my siblings took in life, especially my sister, who was, for them, not supposed to have a career in medicine. My grandmother's a real jerk. "Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have kids and quit." I was working as a high school teacher when I was contacted by one of my dad's old business partners for one of his companies. After I asked him about how the company was doing, he told me that my grandfather, who was still in control of my father's shares, was siphoning money from the company for himself, and he was earning way more than he was giving me and my siblings for our education. So all our lives, he had been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with, and he lied to us, telling us that Dad's companies weren't making any money for us at all. We also realized that when he cut us off, he was cutting us off from our own money, forcing my siblings to drop out and give up careers that they had been working their whole lives for. What's worse is that this was our father's money, and we knew that he had wanted it to help us provide for our futures, even after he passed. And here comes his jerk father, basically crapping on his legacy for his own enrichment. I even found out that he used his position to take possession of the company's office space and force them to set up shop in a smaller, cheaper office while renting the original space out under his own name to the company's competitors to make money from them too, all while I had to work multiple jobs to help my mother and siblings pay the bills. Cue revenge. My grandfather's biggest weakness has always been his pride. In fact, I suspect that he wanted us to think he was helping support us out of his own pocket because he wanted everyone to think he was some kind of hero, when in reality, he was financially choking us. I recognize that no matter what my grandfather said, my siblings, my mother, and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. So after having a statement signed by 3 of them, I approached all the board of directors, sans my grandfather, and let them know that I was now the sole representative of my late dad's estate. My grandfather also made himself chairman of the board. According to the company records, he did no work for the company at all, so the position was just a name that allowed him to receive money. So I convinced them that since he was only chairman as representative of my father's estate, that made me the chairman. I did not intend to keep the position because I did not have the experience for it. Then I contacted other members of my extended family about my grandfather's unethical practices with the company's office space. He was eventually pressured by them into evicting the company's main competitor from their office space. Serves them right for conniving with my grandfather to take the company's old office space. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting my entire life for. When he entered the conference room to preside over the meeting as the chairman, he found his chair facing away from the table with all the board members already seated at the table. and like a Bond villain, I spun the chair around to reveal to him that I'd been the one sitting there the entire meeting. I told him that the company and my family no longer needed him, and that I'd be taking control over representation of my father's estate. "Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school?" he said in shock. I only went, "No, Dad did." The look of sheer embarrassment on his face was perfect. I've never seen him look defeated my entire life until that moment, and this sort of satisfaction could not be achieved by simply ratting him out. I stepped down from the chairman position and took a job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper with a meager salary. But at least now, any profit sharing or dividends that the company released would go where my father wanted it to go. And finally, one of the first decisions I got to make as a board member before stepping down was to give my mother a permanent job that she deserved. My grandfather is now jobless. He spends all his time at home, and because he spent his life being selfish and self-centered, he has no friends. All he had going for him was being able to power trip over other people and boasting about his assets and achievements. Even my grandmother has had it with him, and the two don't even sleep in the same room anymore. I hope he lives the rest of his short life, regretting that he didn't live his life with more compassion and humility. Edit. I've gotten a lot of comments about the legality of what went on. During all this, the only lawyer working in the company was my grandfather, and we all know he never did anything. When we hired a team of actual helpful lawyers, they told us exactly the same things you guys pointed out. They're still trying to clean everything up so we don't get into big trouble. Update. Apparently, my sister saw this post and just informed me that he's kinda miserable now because his wife is angry at him because he siphoned what's left of their money to an extramarital sugar baby he had and probably another attempt at getting someone to affirm and glorify him. I guess he hasn't learned. Am I the jerk for pulling my horse from public lessons? I, 16 female, own a lovely dapple gray mare, Mustang. She's 22 and getting older, but still has tons of spunk and energy. While I was in school, I allowed the place I board at to use her for lessons in return for halved board fee. I'm only 16 and I couldn't ride her much. She did great with it, and she mostly helped out beginner riders and newcomers, leaving the more advanced things to me. Now that school is out for the summer, I was thinking of pulling her, but didn't since I knew they'd need all hands on deck for this summer camp I volunteered to do. Literally free of charge for babysitting and letting them use my horse from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We usually just walk the horses on the trail and escort the newer kids, which is fine and easy. The issue arises when an older kid, let's call him Leo, starts riding. His family owns a barn, and he's been gearing up to ride his own horse, assuring me that he can tack up my horse just fine, despite not riding English pretty much ever. I oblige, trusting him, and go to help out with the craft table since all heck has broken loose. I end up hearing my horse was acting up on the trail and for trotting, which never happens unless she's in heat. I figured she was just having a bad day, but after untacking her, I was practically livid. Her girth was incredibly tight and on a way higher setting than I usually do. She was snippy and clearly uncomfortable. I just gave her a rest day and followed Leo out when he was riding again the next day. As Leo is riding around in the arena, he's incredibly heavy-handed, even after I tell him to stop. He doesn't post at the trot and keeps kicking even when unnecessary. He keeps tightening the girth up too high and will not listening to me. I'm fuming at this point and pull him off the horse, explaining that my mare is fine and he's using too much force. He just kinda nods and goes to untack her, but I keep having to follow behind him to fix the things he messes up. Apparently, he talked to his mother about it, and the barn owner had a chat with me in the tack room about how I need to be more gentle on the campers and that she's allowing my horse to participate out of the kindness of her heart. It felt horrible, but I really felt like I was in the right. So I told her, in a fit of rage, which was not my best moment, that my mare would be going back to private riding and would be pulled from lessons. I backed out of the camp as well and only help every now and then. My barn friends are livid since they're now one horse and one counselor short, and I do feel bad for just some petty thing. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Sounds to me like you aren't taking issue with campers or inexperienced riders, you're taking issue with someone who is deliberately ignoring your instructions on how to treat your horse. I don't know anything about horses, but I do know that a big part of learning to work with animals is accepting that they are all different and you need to tailor your treatment of them based on their personalities and preferences. If the program doesn't support and understand your concern, it's probably best to pull your horse from public riding. I would like to add that horse people are never your friends. In my 16 plus years of experience, I came to the conclusion that 99% are potential jerks. Another per diem tale. Not mine, but a friend's. He's a heavy equipment operator for a company that builds temporary roads for power line, logging, pipeline jobs, that sort of thing. The crew meets up at the yard and travels out to the job site for the first day of the job. They're given a per diem for hotel accommodations for remote jobs, but my friend has a short school bus that he's converted into a camper, so he pockets the per diem. He sleeps in the camper and cooks his own food rather than eat in the restaurant. He gets along well with the rest of the crew and is able to use their rented rooms for showers and such. These guys were local to the yard. Some would get their spouse to drop them off, and one guy would ride his bicycle in. As time went on, the company depended on him to transport a handful of crew members from the yard to the site, from the site back to the hotel, and the next morning from the hotel to the site. His converted bus still had a row of seats, so 4 people sat there and another in the passenger seat with their luggage piled in the back. Some jerk administrator chewed him out for pocketing the per diem and sleeping in the camper and told him that he must rent a hotel room if he was to receive the per diem. So, the next job. He shows up at the yard in his Honda Civic. They have their meeting and it's time to roll, except that the Civic has his gear and his luggage in the back, with the seats folded down. There's no room, and there's 5 guys standing there with no transportation. Foreman asks him what's going on, and my buddy explains that since he's been told not to stay in the camper, he doesn't see any reason to pay the extra gas to drive it to the site. The foreman finds out which penny pincher lit my friend up and calls the project manager and asks him exactly how Mr. Pennypincher plans to cover the costs of getting the crew to the job site. Project manager authorizes foreman to go and rent an SUV and then blasts Mr. Pennypincher. The SUV is a couple of $100 a day, plus mileage. The crew is late to the first day on the job, but that wasn't the big problem. This is a construction job in the boonies, and the crew that piled into the SUV daily were filthy. When they returned the rental SUV, they were hit with an exorbitant cleaning fee. The next job, foreman told my friend that he was now okay to sleep in his camper and pocket the per diem. My friend said that he rather liked staying in the hotel room. He was fine with it, but since he was saving the company the cost of the rental SUV, if they bumped his per diem up, he'd be happy to chauffeur the crew. They did. Sure, I'll take your pennies. I was working at a gas station about 20 years ago. One evening, this lady comes in, dumps like 5 or 6 handfuls of pennies on the counter, and states her preferred brand. Ordinarily, our cashiers would just tell someone to buzz off if they were trying to do this, but I was pretty chill at the time, and I had nothing to do but run the register and stuff my face with food from the deli. So, cue malicious compliance. I just said, okay, but I'll have to take other customers. I'll count this between. She objects. It's all there. I counted it already. I reply, if my drawer comes up wrong, I'll get in trouble. I have to count it. Sorry. She starts stomping around the store, all mad, throwing her arms around, etc. I would later come to recognize this as behavior of someone who's on something. And I start counting, meticulously setting the pennies aside in stacks of 10 and pausing every time a customer comes in. All the while, this lady is acting like she's been hurt. Maybe half a dozen customers, and 10 minutes later, I'm nearing the end of the pile. She's still standing by the door, getting more and more impatient, complaining at everyone who comes through. I was giving the other customers priority, so they didn't care, of course. Anyway, I finished counting and she's short, maybe 15 cents. Who could remember? It was fairly common for people to raid the penny dish to cover the cost of a pack of cigarettes they couldn't quite afford. And this was generally allowed. Small town, and after all, who even cares? But she promised me it was all there, and I got a bit bugged about it. So I take the overflowing free penny dish and move it behind the counter before calling her over. You're X cents short. Can't I just cover it from the dish? Where is it? What dish? There's a dish. There's always a dish. You took it away. I give her a puzzled look, wave my hands over the counter. There's no dish. I don't know what you're talking about. She is incensed and loses it on me for a while. I just shrug it off. She left without her cigarettes, of course. My boss came over afterward and told me I didn't have to count those or even take them. Dude did not get me at all, but I just played it straight and was like, oh, okay. Weekend warriors. About 10 years ago, I worked for a local company that sold power equipment. Most of our clients were landscapers and contractors who either bought or had equipment repaired regularly. We knew all of our regulars. It was a great place to work, partly because the owner and our manager had a zero-tolerance policy for customers and clients who were jerks towards employees. They supported us, trained us well, and didn't gaslight us when we had to deal with jerks. For the most part, our regulars were great, but the weekend warrior, do-it-yourself guys were terrible. Most of them had more money than sense and did not need anything we sold for their home projects. One summer, we had hired a young woman to help on the sales floor on the weekend. She was still in college and kind of lacked in confidence. She was great. She had an agricultural background. She just didn't know our products yet. One Saturday morning, she got stuck with a weekend warrior who wanted to buy a lawnmower. He was looking at something ridiculous, a commercial-grade, zero-turn hustler with a 54-inch deck. He was not mowing acreage. He did not have a farm. He lived in the suburbs. She took him outside to look at some of the mowers, and before long, we could hear him yelling. The manager hurried outside. I was working on a special order when she came back into the store, trying not to angry cry. The owner told her to take a break. The manager finished the sale, and the man then had to go somewhere else to buy a trailer to haul it home because he hadn't planned for that part. When the dust had settled, I asked the manager what happened. He said the man started yelling and calling her names because she didn't know how to turn on the mower and had offered to go get someone else. The fact that he was asking the question indicated he also did not know how to turn on the mower. I'm no longer shocked at the number of people who will drop thousands of dollars on things they don't know how to use. Later that day, the owner came over to me, sighed heavily, and told me the guy had called, demanding we mail him a copy of the manual because he didn't get one. All of the manuals and links to repairs and parts for all of these products we sold were on our website. But no, he wanted a hard copy because he had already been insulted enough and shouldn't have to find it himself. When I brought up the manual, it was 90 pages long, 45 pages in English, 45 pages in Spanish. I printed off the Spanish copy and left it for the mailman. I told the owner what I did when I arrived at work the next day. He just started laughing. When the guy called in to complain, the owner apologized and told him a lot of our clients speak Spanish, so we didn't want to assume people only spoke English. The guy returned the mower. We're pretty sure he couldn't figure out how to get it off the trailer. We sold it a week later to a landscaping company. Am I the jerk for throwing all of my mother-in-law's things out of my bedroom? My mother-in-law moved in with me, female 25, and my husband, male 26, a week ago, while her house is being renovated. The renovations were being done on the second floor, so she had no reason to leave the house, but she said the noise makes her anxious. She didn't go to stay with any of her sons, who have larger homes, but came to stay with us in our one-bedroom apartment. My husband brought her in without even telling me. She brought about 4 huge bags with her and asked if she could put some of her things in my bedroom. I said absolutely and gave all the sock drawers to keep her things in, though I wasn't feeling comfortable with her barging in all the time and invading my privacy just to grab something of hers. She started complaining about lack of storage to put her dresses and makeup in and asked if I could share my closet with her, but I said no for many reasons. One of them is because I need privacy and my closet is where I keep all my personal things. She huffed and puffed but dropped it eventually. I went to work and got home at 8. I entered my bedroom and noticed something strange. I opened my closet and all of my things were gone. Her things, like dresses and blouses, were hanging on or folded on the side. I was so confused, I immediately asked her about it, and she stood near the door and nonchalantly said she borrowed my closet to store her expensive things, since keeping them in bags or in the sock drawers was causing damage. I furiously asked where all my things were. She pointed at a different cabinet in the living room and said all my clothes were there, and as for makeup, jewels were at the bottom of the kitchen cabinet. I lost it completely. I grabbed all her clothes that were inside my closet and threw them out of my bedroom. She starts yelling and then started looking for her phone to call my husband. I told her that I shouldn't be basically kicked out of my own space and told her to take her things and leave. My husband came over and started yelling at me, saying I was way out of line. He told me that all his mom asked me was to share, but I was being petty for no reason. I told him it's my room, and he lashed back, saying it was his room too, and I was being ridiculous. He then went off on me for telling her to leave, but I took my stuff and went to stay with my mom. He tried to speak to me, saying it was me who caused this fight, and saying that he already told me this is all just temporary till his mom's house is done being renovated. He said my reaction was wrong and made his mom upset. He asked me to let it go and get right with his mom and reach a compromise. Am I the jerk for how I reacted? Not the jerk. Stay at your mom's until your mother-in-law is out, and you need to think long and hard about counseling or divorce. Mama's boys are not good husbands or fathers. Do not even consider having kids with this man. This is a big, major husband problem. Not the jerk. First off, your husband brings her in without checking with you. Then when she takes over your space, he sides with her. Do you have anywhere else you can go or someone else you can stay with? If your husband is this devoted to his mom, he can have her keep him company instead of you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. He sounds like even more of a mama's boy than you, Reddit boy. Play stupid games at work, win stupid prizes. Early last year, I started working as a contractor supporting one of the many government agencies here in the US. My job description was pretty simple. Act as administrative support for a particular federal employee. In effect, I'm a glorified secretary. I push papers, schedule and file things, and act as a gopher when necessary. The job wasn't particularly difficult, but it really helped that the Fed and I got along like a house on fire. The problem is, the Fed I work for doesn't get along with another Fed who works in the same office. Their job descriptions have nothing to do with each other, and there is really very little need for them to interact with each other. But for some reason, which I still don't know, there was bad blood between them. Cue the lockdown. Our office went from a steady workload to a maximum telework position, and just like that, there was no work for the contractors to do. No more pushing papers, no more scheduling or filing things, and no more acting as a gopher. Just long days sitting in my cubicle reading Reddit on my phone. The Fed I support decides that we'll take the opportunity to clean out 2 offices in another building that haven't been used for years so they can be repurposed. It sat idle for years because no one wanted to clean them. These rooms are filthy with electronics that were old in the 90s, old break room food, cables everywhere, the works. As we get started, I'm happy to be there as cleaning these rooms means I finally have something to do. Better yet, the Fed I worked for was right there with me, elbow deep in garbage. After the first day, we've made solid progress on one of the rooms, but it took 8 hours of hard labor to get there. I go back to my cubicle to gather my things to go home and find the other Fed waiting for me. Where have you been all day? I've been in the other building helping my Fed clean out a room. That's not in your job description. You don't need to be helping this person do that. I really don't mind. It's better than sitting around on the government's dime doing nothing. And besides, my job is to support this person. If they want me to help them clean out a room, I'm more than happy to help. No, you can't be doing that. If it's not in your job description, then it's not your job. This Fed should know better than to take advantage of your good nature and make you do work that you weren't hired for. I'm sorry, you're going to have to take this up with my Fed. As far as I know, my job is to support this person in whatever way they need, including physical labor. We'll see about that. The next day, my Fed and I go back to the other building to work. We're 10 minutes into cleaning when the other Fed shows up with a member of the union in tow. The Fed then rips into my Fed for forcing me to do work outside of the scope of my duties and brought the union representative to back up this opinion. The funny thing was, the union rep had no idea what he was doing there. Neither my Fed nor I are members of the union, and his opinion really had nothing to do with the situation. The other Fed brought him in to use as a prop. To his credit, he seemed to know that, because he just gave us an uncomfortable shrug with a look like, I have no idea why I'm here either, and said nothing at all. Rather than fight about it, my Fed surrenders gracefully, and the 2 of us reluctantly leave the uncleaned rooms behind. A week later, I was sent home after guidance came down from Washington saying that since there was no work being done, contractors were no longer needed to support the Feds on staff until lockdown ended. I sat home for about a day before getting a call from my company telling me another division needed me. This would be a permanent change of office, and as long as I didn't mind the risk of getting sick, I could start immediately. Fast forward several months to November. I'm happily working away in my new office when the Fed who had a problem with my helping clean the rooms comes in to speak with some of the employees in my new office. This person is absolutely livid because the 2 rooms had finally been reassigned, but still needed to be cleaned before they could be turned over to their new owners. This Fed was called into work specifically to clean the rooms, despite still being on maximum telework status, because there was no one else they could call. All of the contractors who had supported them had already been reassigned, and there was nothing in this person's job description that said that they could be assigned this particular duty. Apparently, it took almost 2 weeks of back-breaking labor to clean out the rooms until they were good enough to transfer. The best part was, this person seems to have completely forgotten what part I had to play in this little drama, because when they came to my office to complain about the injustice of it all to anyone who would listen, they stood right in front of my desk to do so. I got to hear every word of the story right from this horse's mouth. Entitled sister stole my iPhone. Big mistake. So this just happened this morning. I'm 17, male, and my sister, who's 19, is going to a concert with her boyfriend in August. She asked our parents to buy plane tickets for them, but they refused because they already gave her a lot of money every month that she wastes. For my birthday, they got me an iPhone 13 Pro. She got angry and called them jerks for refusing to buy the plane tickets for her while giving me an expensive gift. I told her the best thing our parents bought me before this iPhone was a book that I didn't even want, and they always forgot about my birthday, even if I talked about it for months before. I reminded her that she always got anything that she asked for, regardless if it was her birthday: expensive clothes, toys, phones, perfume, makeup, and even a car for her 16th birthday. And they still give her a monthly allowance, which they have never gave me. She picked up the box and left. I sat there in shock because I couldn't believe what she was doing. My parents kept yelling at her to come back, but she ignored them and just drove away. I've been calling and texting her nonstop to give me the phone back. She texted back, telling me to keep dreaming, and blocked my number. I informed my parents I was going to call the cops on her, but they told me not to do it because they'll get me a new one. The only reason they started treating me nicely and getting me a birthday gift is because after she left for college, they found out they had another kid in the house that they're supposed to care for and love. Even the phone I currently have, I bought after working all summer last year because they always refused to buy me one, no matter how cheap it was. My sister got one when she was 11. Even though my parents didn't like what she did, they still looked for reasons to excuse her behavior, like saying that she was probably just stressed after her exams and how she's been looking forward to going to this concert. They even started blaming themselves for refusing to buy the plane tickets in the first place. I really want to call the cops on her despite their refusal, because who says she isn't going to steal from me in the future? Not the jerk. Your sister and your parents need a real wake-up call. Call the cops. They all deserve it. OP is 17. His parents bought the phone and presumably pay the monthly bill. So I'd think that legally the phone belongs to his parents, so they would be the ones who could really press charges against the sister for stealing the phone. I'm not a lawyer though. Gifts are considered the property of the receiver no matter who bought it. My son's phone was stolen by a now former friend of his. He called the cops. They got it back. You wouldn't be the jerk, but you need to play the long game here. If your sister gets a theft charge against her, it might, depending on circumstances, jeopardize her college place, and she'll end up back at home with you where you have to deal with her every day. Plus, you'll have to deal with the fallout from your parents. Instead, I'd wait until your parents get you a new phone, and then call the phone company and get the one she stole locked, so it's absolutely no use to her. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you call the cops on your sister or not? Please let us know. A thief is a thief. I would have done been called the cops, bruh. Harass me about my gardens? Okay, we can do this the hard way. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front facing the street and one in the back bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rosa arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather passed in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, around 2005, my mom read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilac, rhododendron, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and I so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she passes. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn, we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Then recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and it contained poisonous berries, which were a danger to people walking by. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way. And while the berries are poisonous, to get to them, you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be an ideal food for some local birds. So, I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature-friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our garden as especially nature-friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature, and since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. There was a guy in one of the suburbs near me that had a similar approach. He let all the native plants grow wild around his house because he liked living near nature. His neighbors complained to the local council that it was unsightly and a fire hazard. The council sent him notices to trim it back and clean it up. He refused them all. The council set a date that they would come and remove all trees, plants, and shrubs and charge him for the cost involved. He contacted a local environmental agency that came and inspected his property, and they found 2 species of endangered birds had nested there. One was assumed extinct. After that, there was nothing they could do, as the birds were protected by law. Am I the jerk because I won't cook for my roommates? About 5 months ago, I struck an agreement with my roommates. My husband and I live with 2 other people, and we have a pretty small fridge, so there was never any room for anything in it, because there were always 2 households worth of ingredients stocked in it. Plus, it was getting pretty annoying having 2 sets of people fight, not really, over the same kitchen every day when it was time to cook dinner. So I proposed a deal. Everyone contribute into a communal dinner budget, and I would cook dinner for all 4 of us every day. I'm great at economizing and cooking on a low budget, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but cooking is a huge hobby of mine, so I feel confident saying I'm not too shabby at that either. I like to cook a wide range of foods, which is something my husband loves. For example, Japanese-style ramen, Chinese braised pork over rice, Moroccan curry, shakshuka, pasta salad, grilled fish with roasted vegetables, and authentic Italian carbonara are all things that might show up on the dinner table when I cook. Things went well for a while, but after a couple of months, our roommates started making requests. That's fine. Sometimes I would even ask for ideas on what to cook, but then the restrictions started and never stopped adding up. Here's the list of things they don't want me to use at all. No pasta, no curry, no rosemary, thyme, oregano, no provincial herbs, olives, no Asian noodles, no soy sauce, no oyster sauce, peanut-based sauces, chickpeas, no lamb, pesto, basmati rice, no pork belly, sun-dried tomatoes, Szechuan peppers, no balsamic, no couscous, no shrimp, no fennel, no sugar, and must be low salt. I'm pretty sure there are plenty that I forgot, but they would definitely be mentioned if I used. I like to be adventurous when I cook, and I just got really tired of being so limited. It honestly felt like I was being handed a new restriction every other day after a while. So I stopped cooking for them and went back to only cooking for my husband and I. But my roommates are pretty upset that I'm not cooking anymore. They've started hinting that they would like me to cook for them again, and I just say no. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're not a restaurant. They can go back to eating cheese out of a tube. I will move in, eat all of your food, try all of your experiments, and never complain. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not paying half towards my dog's puppy's vet bill and expenses? I know this sounds insane, but it's been causing grief for weeks. I moved back home a few years ago to take over my parents' hobby farm. My parents asked I continue to keep sheep and goat herds. Animals that try to eat our goats are common, so we've always had livestock guard dogs there. I have 2. They're very well trained and socialized, but I don't allow dogs I don't know on the farm unless I'm there the entire time. The setup is like an H. One side is the sheep pastures and barn. The other side is goats. In the middle is a gigantic fenced-in area for the dogs where their toys, feeders, water troughs, wading pools, and dog sheds are. They can go from one pasture to the other. The gate to the dog area faces the back of the house. It was a regular garden gate, but I fixed it so wild animals couldn't climb over the top of it. The only space is about an 8-inch gap between the top of the gate and the gate post to move the latch easily. Too small for my dogs to squeeze through, and nothing has gone through there before. One of my dogs is a male and not neutered for reasons relating to the community, and us all knowing where our helpers come from and are going to, since these doggos perform a specific function in a farming community. Other dog is an older female and spayed. My job requires me to travel once in a while. I had a week trip about 4 months ago. My girlfriend invited her friend Taylor to come stay with her while I was gone. Before Taylor arrived, she asked us if there was a room she could put her dog's crate in. I told her not to bring her dog since I'd be gone. She arrives, she has her dog. In heat. My girlfriend told her she could bring her. I offered to pay for her dog to go to a local kennel since I'd be gone, but my girlfriend and Taylor said I was controlling. I told them I just didn't want to leave room for issues. Day before I have to leave, Taylor let her dog out unsupervised, and I caught her dog trying to squeeze through the gap of the gate. Got her dog, brought her back in, told her she either needs to keep her dog on a leash and supervised at all times when outside, or she goes home now. My girlfriend and I fought about it again, and I had to leave for my work trip before it was resolved. I asked my cousin while I was gone. He said he and his wife saw the dog on the leash. Taylor left the day I got home. Weeks later, her dog had puppies. Girlfriend admitted that they only put Taylor's dog on the leash when my cousin was over and let her run around the rest of the time. Her dog kept getting into the dog yard with my boy, and they stopped her if they saw her. Taylor wants me to pay half of the vet bills and puppy expenses until they're homed. She's railing about me to my girlfriend about me not having my dog neutered. I refuse to pay. My dogs are contained, and they stayed where they are supposed to be, and I told Taylor to not bring her dog to begin with. She and my girlfriend can cover the expenses since they went behind my back. Am I in the wrong here? Not the jerk. She brought her non-spayed dog to a house with a non-neutered male dog while her dog was in heat. It takes a special kind of stupid to let a dog in heat run around unsupervised, and you tried to keep it from happening. People like this give me tension headaches. Not the jerk. And why is she getting at you for not having your working dog neutered when her pet dog is also not spayed? This is her own fault. You told her not to bring her dog, and she did anyway, knowing her own dog was in heat. She's a moron. Edit. Your girlfriend is also the jerk and an idiot, because she definitely should have known this would happen and went behind your back on it anyway. Not the jerk. That friend knew exactly what she was doing and very likely wanted her dog to have puppies for the money she would get from them. You owe her nothing. You told her not to bring the dog, and she ignored you. When you offered a compromise of leashed and supervised all the time or leave, she did neither and lied. She made her bed, she can lie in it. Also, consider getting a new girlfriend while you're at it. Am I the jerk for leaving the house while my girlfriend is still sleeping? So I made plans for us to get up, go work at a coffee shop, then meet my family for lunch, and then go to the market. Very nice day. My girlfriend likes to sleep in, and I get up super early, 5:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. I told her I wanted to leave early, like 7 a.m., because I had a ton of work to do before seeing my family. She expressed how exhausted and tired she was yesterday. So this morning, when I woke up at 6, considering we went to bed at 11:30 p.m., I didn't wake her up and let her sleep. I got ready to leave and went to give her a kiss goodbye while telling her, "Take all the time you need. Meet me at the coffee shop. I don't want to rush you. I know you're tired." She all of a sudden gets all cold with me, saying, "OMG, why didn't you wake me up? I thought we were going together." I expressed that I wanted to let her sleep because I knew how tired she was and that she can just meet me later. Later being an hour later so she can get ready while I get a head start on my work. I finally leave the house and she texts me basically saying how she doesn't understand why I was able to wake her up to say goodbye but not able to wake her up when I woke up. She later starts texting me, arguing, saying that it isn't fair that we made plans and I'm going off on my own without her. All I wanted to do was let her sleep in more because I knew how tired she was. She starts with a name calling, etc., and I told her, instead of arguing with me, since you're already up, get ready and come over. The coffee place is 10 minutes away from our house. She says she doesn't want to drive there and pay for parking and pay for gas. I don't know if she expected me to drive back to pick her up. I really think she's being a baby. My solution would be to just get in your car, drive over. It's not that difficult. I apologized for not waking her up, but I genuinely just wanted her to sleep. She finally basically cancels all our daily plans and says, "Have a nice day." I'm sitting in the coffee shop alone now. It's been 2 hours. She isn't coming. So, am I the jerk for leaving while she was still asleep? You're the jerk. You made plans with her and decided without asking her she could just meet you. I get you think it's being sweet letting someone get more sleep, but I'll let you in on a secret. Better ask than to assume. Women like communication. I think your gesture of letting her take her time is nice, but she wanted that choice in her court, not yours. Next time, wake her up, then ask, and if anything, at least you tried. Calling her a baby because she's frustrated with how you went about something isn't right. Honestly, I'd be pressed, mostly knowing you have to pay for parking and how insane gas prices are, that my partner would leave me and want me to drive to meet them. Most women don't feel good when their partner leaves them behind. You're the jerk, dude. Should have asked her if she wanted to sleep in. You guys made plans and you changed them without asking. I know you had good intentions, but you should have asked her if she wanted to sleep in and meet you later. You're the jerk. Gas prices are expensive, and it's not surprising she would want to take one trip instead of two. You can't just take gas for granted like that. If you had the idea of waking up earlier and her sleeping in, you should have discussed it with her the night before. Instead, you woke her up and stressed her out, which defeated the whole purpose. You're the jerk. Major red flags on your part, and you sound like a real creep. I know exactly how your girlfriend feels, and I hope she leaves you. Do you have any clue how infuriating it is when someone changes plans without even asking if you're okay with it first? And the way you talk about wanting to let her sleep in, you really think you're some sort of a hero, don't you? The bar literally couldn't be set any lower than it already is for you dudes, and you still act like this? Unbelievable. I've accepted that I'll probably be single forever because it's nearly impossible to find a decent guy these days. She's single? Gee, I wonder why. Hey Karen, haven't we read a story similar to this where the boyfriend got mad that his girlfriend didn't wake him up when she got up? We sure have, and everyone told her to leave him because it's a major red flag and she's not his mama and shouldn't have to wake him up. Don't you just love Reddit? A fiasco with pancakes. This happened at a restaurant a few years ago. We'll just call it Cracker Barrel. So on a busy Sunday afternoon, the church crowd was slowly winding down and we were nearing our dinner rush. This particular restaurant, you can order breakfast all day. At around 3 p.m., 2 ladies were seated in my section and I greeted them promptly. Both ordered drinks and their food as well at the same time. Guest 1 ordered Mama's pancake breakfast with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy bacon. Guest 2 ordered the Grandma's sampler with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy sausage, bacon, and ham. I put their order in exactly as they ordered it and told the cooks how they said they wanted to see no pink anywhere. Cooks make the food. I expedite and bring out their meal. Everything looks the way they ordered it: charcoal, bacon, sausage, and ham. I set the food down and they immediately start running me. Never once did they ask for everything at the same time, even after I asked, "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Every time I brought back something like hot sauce, ketchup, or napkins, they always needed something else. After 5 minutes of back and forth, they said everything was fine and I went and did other duties. They hadn't touched their food until I had everything for them they had me run around for. A few minutes later, my manager on duty comes to me and asks me about table 231. He says that they are complaining their eggs are cold and the food is burned. I explained they said everything looked fine and their eggs wouldn't have been cold if they had asked me for extra napkins, hot sauce, ketchup, and extra butter and jelly on one trip instead of 6. He goes back and forth with them and they are adamant they are not paying for the eggs or bacon and are only paying for the pancakes. Cue malicious compliance. The Grandma sampler comes with 2 pancakes, a sampler of meat, eggs, and a side of your choice for $9.99. 2 a la carte pancakes are $7.99, so $2 off for all you math geniuses out there. Mama's pancake breakfast comes with 3 pancakes, eggs, and your choice of meat for $7.99. 3 a la carte pancakes are $9.99, which is obviously $2 more than the breakfast. Manager on duty hands the receipts to each lady and both stop him before he can walk away. Guest 2 is upset she's paying $2 less than what her breakfast would have cost and she felt that wasn't a good enough discount. Guest 1 is upset because her meal is now more than what it was before. The only thing my boss kept saying to both of them was, "You asked to only pay for the pancakes, and that's what I charged you for." And then he walked away. They paid up front, complaining the entire time at the cash register and making a scene, threatened to call corporate, and said they will be returning to speak to someone higher than my manager on duty. Manager on duty and I went in the back and kept laughing. You don't get many wins in the service industry, but this one will always be a memorable one. Am I the jerk for declining to crochet a sweater for my cousin? I, 38 female, crocheted myself a cardigan recently that I really like and I wear it often. I went to visit a cousin who's 42 and her daughter who's 18 with my mother who's 71, and I wore the cardigan. Cousin's daughter complimented me on it and abruptly asked me to make one for her. I explained it took me about 40 hours to make mine. It's fine yarn and pretty long, and that I could send her the tutorial I learned it from. She starts to tear up a bit and sniffles while telling me, "That's not fair. You know I don't know how to do that kind of stuff." I try to gently explain that the tutorial is really good at showing and teaching how. She's still looking pouty. Cousin pipes up at this point, saying it would be nice if I could just make her one, that she's too busy to spend all that time on a sweater because she works. This hit a nerve with me because my cousin often makes passive-aggressive comments about how I don't work. I'm a stay-at-home mom, work-at-home mom to 3 kids under 8, and have a little home-based business doing tailoring and mending, some crafting, etc. She doesn't consider my work to be real work, acts like I must live a life of leisure. Previously, I had always bitten my tongue and changed the subject because I didn't want the drama, but I just let it out this time. I told her I do work, and I do it while caring for 3 kids. She laughed and said it hardly pays enough to be considered work. I lost my temper and told her my finances were none of her business and that she's out of her mind to think she can treat me so rudely while trying to demand hours and hours of my labor for free. Cousin starts crying at this point, and the visit obviously ends. Afterwards, my mom tells me she's very disappointed in me for the language that I used and that I am partly to blame for wearing the sweater that started the argument and I wasn't polite. I flatly told her that's ridiculous. It's an article of clothing. It's meant to be worn. I have quite a few pieces of clothing that I've made myself. Should I stop wearing any of them in case entitled people decide they want me to make them all free clothes? Anyways, now my cousin and cousin's daughter are thinking I'm the jerk, and my mom thinks we're all jerks apparently. Am I the jerk? My time is valuable. It takes me 40 hours. My hourly rate is $30 US plus yarn. This sweater is worth $1,250. Are you actually asking me to give you over $1,000? I haven't worked here in 10 years. Just for some context, I worked in retail at the same store for about 15 years. I was part of the management team. When we had our highest ranked manager leave to explore other opportunities, she was a young single mother, and the retail management life doesn't afford you as much family time as you might think. Myself, along with the rest of our team, had to run the store on our own for a while we waited for her replacement to be trained in another store, which afforded the rest of us with even less family time. So by the time the new manager was able to start, me and the rest of our team were completely burnt out, which was not helped much by the fact that our new team member was a real Karen-type personality. She wouldn't do the work, but then would criticize our work for not being done the way she wanted it to be. As she was higher on the food chain, if she didn't like my work, I had to redo it. So 1 week into the new queen's reign of terror, I'd had enough. I was done rebuilding the same displays 15 times in a shift. So I walked into the cash office where I knew she would be sitting down on the phone with her friend for the 5th time in the 2 hours she had to be there. Handed in my resignation effective immediately, handed in my keys, and walked out. I never felt that free in my life. Fast forward to this past holiday season. I'm out doing some heavy Christmas shopping for the family. I run into a woman who I recognize as a regular customer who always came in when I was still working there. Also a Karen type. She was always that one customer that no one ever wanted to check out, so I often ended up being the one to check her out back in the day because I was really good at gritting my teeth behind a big smile, some sarcasm, and a can-do attitude. She walks up to me and says, "I see you're out of," some product that I didn't care to commit to memory, and asks if I will check the back, to which I reply, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." I'm clearly not in the company dress code as I'm wearing a winter coat for starters, but also sweatpants, snow boots, and a winter hat. So I figured that will be the end. Nope, she replied with, "You do too work here? I know you're just coming in or shopping on your day off, but it's your job to help the customers in this store. Now help me." I said, "Seriously, ma'am, I don't work here." To which she responds, "I know you do. You've checked me out before." I said, "Yes, I did work here, and I did check you out before 10 years ago, and I haven't worked here for 10 years now." As I'm walking away to move to another aisle, I hear her just whining about how horrible of an employee I am, and she's going to see to it that I'm fired. I brush it off and keep shopping. About the time I was starting to forget about the interaction completely, I turn a corner and see Amy, my former subordinate, who is the new head manager and a good friend of mine. Heading straight towards me, Karen's hands are flailing, still complaining that Amy has a horrible employee and she wants her fired now. When Amy sees who it is that Karen is complaining about, she couldn't hold back. She busts up laughing and says, "Ma'am, I can't fire her. She doesn't work here anymore. And even if she did, she would still be my boss." She then accuses Amy of lying to try and cover up her own ineptitude. She storms off, leaving a cart full of items behind. I took a few minutes to talk to Amy, and I even helped her put Karen's stuff back on the shelf when Amy was called to the back office. As I'm checking out, I can still hear Karen arguing with them that she knows I work here and she will have us all fired. They ended up having to pull out past employee files and show her my resignation letter dated 10 years earlier before she would finally go away. Last time I spoke to Amy, she said Karen hasn't been back since. Quit your job and raise my kid. My sister-in-law, brother's wife, is a real Karen. High maintenance and demanding to the extreme. She will demand things from my parents, to which they say no, and then she gets mad, refuses to talk to them, and takes it out on my brother until he calls up my parents to ask they apologize because it's making his life horrible. Years ago, when they had their first kid, my niece, my parents were elated at their first grandkid. Sister-in-law's mom isn't in the picture, so my mom was very attentive to sister-in-law, helping her shop for baby, being a supportive shoulder, even offering advice and insight into pregnancy, labor, and birth. Sister-in-law lavished in the attention and things were golden, until sister-in-law went back to work. I was at my parents' house visiting when the phone rings. Dad answers, listens for a few, and then simply says, "I'm not getting in the middle of them. Talk to your mother." And he hands the phone to my mom. She listens a bit and then says, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm just not okay with her plan. I'm not going to apologize and I'm not quitting my job. That's the end of it." And she hangs up. Of course, I had to demand details. Sister-in-law was going back to her job and called my mom up a day or two prior to this to discuss childcare. She told my mom about the daycares she had checked out and how expensive they all were and what a struggle it was going to be. But then she had a brilliant idea. My mom should become a full-time nanny for niece. Of course, she would have to quit her job, but since she's only 5 years from retirement, it's not a big deal. My mom graciously informed her that while she loved watching niece, she was not going to quit her job. Cue a hissy fit. But the only other person who could do it is sister-in-law's 90-year-old grandma, but she could only watch niece at her house because she's 90 and she doesn't drive. And she has too many pets, 3 of which were sister-in-laws that she dumped on her. "Daycare is so expensive. Don't you want quality time with niece?" Mom suggested maybe sister-in-law find a cheaper daycare. No, Montessori daycares are the absolute best. Mom pointed out she's never even heard of that, so there's no way her childcare would be Montessori. Mom suggested sister-in-law go back to work part-time and then daycare would only have to be part-time and thus cheaper. No, if she wants to stay on track for her retirement goals, she needs to go back full-time. Mom ran out of advice and finally just said, "Well, and I think you're going to need to lower your standards or find another option because I'm not quitting my job and that's final." And she hung up on her. My mom was not happy at how hard I laughed, and of course, when I had my kid a few years later, I jokingly asked how close she was to retirement because I needed a nanny. She messed up. This one lady has been at the hotel before and became notorious because her kids were rowdy. I'm in the back office and I hear her check in at the front desk with the front desk attendant. She signs the registration card for the 2 queen rooms for 3 nights already, but asks how much a 2 queen suite is. He tells her it's $189 and $80 price difference per night. It's too much money for 3 nights, she says. She tells the front desk she'll take the suite for the first night, but move to the cheaper room tomorrow for the other 2 nights. Sure, that's no problem. Tomorrow morning, I'm working the shift, and I see her in the morning. I ask her if she will be moving to the cheaper room today or staying in the same room. She tells me she will stay in the suite room. Okay, no problem. The following morning, I'm working the shift again and I see her. Ask her the same question. She says she'll stay in the suite room. Sure, no problem. Not sure why she would have been insistent on moving if the price is too high since she took the room for all 3 nights, but okay. She checks out after the 3rd night with no problems. Well, except her kids threw a pool chair into the pool and stole our door padlock. She's already not in good graces with the hotel. A few days later, I'm in the back office and I answer a phone call. It's her. She's wondering why her bill is so high. I explained to her that while she was checking in, I was in the back office and heard the entire exchange. I explain how she verbally agreed to the rate change and wanted to move to the cheaper room for the 2nd and 3rd night. I tell her I'm the one who asked if she wanted to move, and she declined twice, thus locking the increased rate. She says, "The paper I signed has a different rate. You're scamming me. I'm not paying more than what I signed." Oh, I see where this is going. She thinks she can save money by doing this scam. I tell her I'm not reducing the rate. I heard her verbal agreement. I explain her verbal agreement with the rate change is enough. If she had a problem with the rate, she should have moved or not taken the suite room, and she should have seen her folio we provided under her door and inquired then before checking out. She wasn't buying it. It wasn't a pretty argument. She says, "I have a future reservation there. What can we do so this situation doesn't happen again?" Oh, heck no. I look up her reservation and I tell her, "What we can do is cancel your reservation because we're not renting to you anymore. You're banned." "You can't do that," she says. "Oh, yes, I can. I'm doing it right now. You're not welcome here anymore." I then hung up on her. A week later, I get a chargeback on my desk from her for the difference of rate. I explain the situation to the credit card company and win the case. She has yet to return. HR Karen insists on changing our relaxed dress code at my job. Big mistake. Howdy, folks. This one took place closing in on 6 years ago. The bosses, at the time, were usually very cool and easy to get along with. However, some Karen got into HR and insisted on changing the work culture to suit her desires and vision. She rewrote the dress code, and overnight, instead of being allowed to show up dressed comfortably, as long as it wasn't dirty, smelly, or full of holes, tech support center, we suddenly had to dress business professional. She even specified the materials the clothing could be made out of. She tried firing almost everyone there for violating dress code, before a manager, one I still love to this day, told her to calm herself because she had not only not published the dress code, it hadn't been approved by management. HR Karen gets upset and pulls strings to get it approved in a couple of days. So in those couple of days, I was reading through the dress code, trying to see what I could do to make her regret it. The dress code, word for word. Clothing is to be made of woolen materials only, unless a specific exception is made below. Allowable clothing is listed as business suits, button-up dress shirts, monocolor ties, leather shoes, skirts, and blouses. If wearing a skirt or blouse, silk materials are accepted. Of note, the silk exception was put in solely for her as she claimed that wool gave her hives. Anyway, the air conditioning had been out for weeks, and we had been getting by in the building with big fans and wearing light shorts and shirts. It was a hot summer, so I searched for a loophole in the new dress code. I'm sure you can already see what loophole I found and exploited. Note, despite having lost a lot of weight since then, I am still a hefty, very hairy man, over 200 pounds lost since then, with a very long beard. So day one of the new dress code on the way to work, I stopped in at a local Goodwill. I bought the most garish skirt I could find that I could squeeze in, with the most feminine blouse I could find. I paid for them and got dressed at a gas station just down the street for the work location. I waltzed into work with lots of stares coming my way. However, I was the only man on the floor not sitting in a pool of his own sweat. Skirts are surprisingly breezy. Less than 30 minutes in, everyone in the building can hear HR Karen screaming at and about me as she runs up to my desk and demands I go to her office for disciplinary action. I tell her I cannot do that as company policy states that disciplinary action can only be undertaken by the employee's team lead and the site manager, not HR. She then screams at both of them to force me into her office. They both give me the stink eye, but I give them a thumbs up and a big grin and say, "Please, please, please, make me go into her air-conditioned office." Did I also mention she had the only working air conditioner on site? So the four of us trudged to her office, with me grinning ear to ear. Myself and many coworkers laughing at this large, hairy, heavily bearded man in a silk skirt walking past everyone. All because I and they know how ridiculous I look, and how they know I only pulled stunts at work like this when I am 100% in the right. So we get to HR Karen's office and I sit down. She tells me I'm going to be fired for insubordination and breaking dress code. I laugh in her face and tell her, terminations can only be processed upon agreement by the team lead of the employee, site management, and HR. You are the one that insisted upon and wrote that rule. Unless they both agree, you are lying and can shut up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs at this point. She said it was harassment for me, a big hairy guy, to be dressed like this. Oh, can you point out in the dress code where I can't wear a skirt? As soon as I said that, my team lead suddenly lit up and started giggling as she knew where I was taking this. Karen got out a written copy of the dress code and then started sputtering and stammering as she read it word for word as I typed it above. As she started screaming at me again for being inappropriate, the site manager looked at her and said, "Do you really want to get fired for harassment? He has you caught in a ringer over a barrel of fire, and it would cost us potentially millions." Strangely enough, the dress code was rescinded before the end of the day, and we were allowed to go back to the way we had been dressing. As an extra, she's no longer with the company and has been gone for years now. She made blunder after blunder, usually screaming at me and my bosses, but I always pointed her at the policies she made and got approved, as I was following them to the letter. Have you ever had a dress code that you couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with it? Please let us know. As long as I can wear my Live, Laugh, Love shirt, I'm happy. Am I the jerk for returning the money my husband took from my family for attending our cookout? For context, I'm female 28, and my husband, who's 33, comes from a wealthy family, and he himself has inherited a number of assets from his relatives. One of them is this huge house where we live right now, with a pool and a huge backyard with lots of features. We decided to host our first cookout after we got married 7 months ago, and we invited both his and my family. That was on Friday. Both families came and we had lots of fun, and then everyone went home later. I then got a phone call from my mom, and she didn't sound okay. She asked whether or not my husband took money from his family before they attended the cookout. I was confused. I asked what she was talking about, and she told me that my husband charged every single person from my side of the family who attended the event $25. I was utterly shocked and very angry, and I felt like this has legitimately damaged my relationship with most of my family because almost all of them came over. Not only that, but he got $275 from them. I was so livid, I hung up the phone and confronted him immediately. He told me my family got to enjoy the space and view and said that I should think of it as a resort cookout since this house has lots of luxuries. I told him it was a horrible thing for him to do, and that what made it worse is the fact that his family didn't have to pay like mine had to. He laughed and then reminded me that his family gave him this house. I demanded he give the money back, but he said no, and that he won't even give it to me since the house is technically his. I went and took the money and gave everyone who paid their money back with a sincere apology from me. My husband found out and flipped out at me, calling what I did an overstepping and disrespectful. I told him he shouldn't have taken money from my family for being guests at our house, but he said it's his house and said that he had bet my family has never got to attend a cookout at a house like this and that it was just $25, but I disrespected him and went behind his back and took the money that wasn't mine. We stopped talking after this argument, and he keeps venting to his mom about me taking his money that he earned his own way. Your husband sounds like the world's biggest jerk. Needless to say, not the jerk. Your husband's reasoning makes no sense. Who charges people, let alone family, to come to their house and have a party? Rich people? You don't get rich and definitely don't stay rich by being a nice person. I worked in financing for a few years and often would speak to clients who were wealthy. I learned pretty quickly that there were two kinds of millionaires: nice rich people and jerks. Many of the kindest people I talked to in those years were our wealthiest clients. I suspect that many of them became wealthy because people wanted to engage with them, patronize their businesses, and hire them because they were nice people. There were also definitely clients who inherited wealth and displayed an astonishing amount of entitlement. There were also plenty of clients who would get incredibly nasty about accounts that were worth very little. Those were the jerks. Money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies who you are. I spent decades working in the banking industry. I found that many people got rich because they found a way to hang on to every single penny. Funny you should say this. When I got into the hotel business way back when, it never ceased to amaze me how unbelievably cheap rich people could be. I was venting to my dad about this once. He laughed and said, "How do you think they got rich?" Am I the jerk for leaving my fiancé at the mall after he insisted that I buy him a $350 watch? Me, female 32, and my fiancé, male 30, Aaron, have been together for 2 years. I have a high-paying job and I work long hours. He used to have, a 3-week shift at a job that pays about 5 times less than mine. We're on pretty great terms on everything except money. He's a big spender and spends so much on fancy stuff, although his job does not give him this luxury. He constantly likes and wants new stuff like watches, gadgets, electronics, and car accessories, and I do my best to use every occasion, like Christmas and birthdays and New Year's, to get him the things that he wants. Lately, and after he lost his job, I've been noticing him tagging along whenever I go shopping, then have me buy him expensive stuff right then and there. I end up paying to avoid causing a scene in public because he'd beg me, then start throwing a fit if I refuse. I talked to him about it since it seemed like a pattern, but he said he just happened to see something he liked and thought I could pay for it. I told him that I no longer feel comfortable with this, and that next time he tries to put me on the spot, then have me pay for something that he likes and throws a tantrum if I refused, then I'd walk out and I'd leave him there. He crossed his heart and said he'd never do such a thing. On Wednesday, we went to the mall to get a Father's Day gift for my dad, and we walked by the accessory store. Aaron told me to stop and follow him as he entered the store. I knew this wasn't going to go well because he repeatedly tried on this watch that was worth over $350 and expressed his admiration for it. He then asked if I could pay for it, but I said no and lied about having only $300 for my dad's gift, which is why we were there in the first place. He started going on and on about how cool and catch the watch was, then asked if my dad was more important than him. I looked around and saw people looking at us as he started raising his voice. I told him to knock it off, but he refused and insisted I pay for it. I just turned around and walked out of the store and out of the mall. I got in my car and went home. He started calling me nonstop, but we didn't talk until he got home. He blew up, saying I acted ridiculously and selfishly after he begged me and I refused. He said that I then made a joke out of him by walking out and leaving him at the mall. I told him of what I said would happen if he decided to put me in this position again. He argued that all he was asking for was just $350 and even showed me a small notebook saying he's been writing down everything I pay for so he could pay me back, but I was too selfish to even consider it. He yelled at me about this, then went out to meet his friends. His best friend tried to get involved by shaming me for how I behaved at the mall and hinting that what I was doing was borderline financial control. Am I the jerk? Should I have just paid for the watch? Edit. He said he was going to pay me back, but didn't tell me this at the mall. Don't know if it changes anything since he has no money. Not the jerk. Break up with him and tell him he now has full financial control of his own life. OP. I think that the entire situation just seemed like he was struggling with money at first, and I tried to be understanding, but then I couldn't keep paying for stuff that, in my opinion, was not essential, even after he said he'd pay me back. It started affecting my money because it affected my ability to pay off debts and monthly expenses. Honey, please don't marry this man. Please don't. He will absolutely ruin your finances, if not your life. But let's be generous and forget the money stuff for a second. Focus on how comfortable he is with yelling at you in public. He either has a terrible temper or he knows he can manipulate you by causing a scene. Either way, that's horrific and not something you want to suffer for the next 50-ish years. Getting his friend in on it too is sickening. I'm also 32 with a 30-year-old fiance, and he has never ever raised his voice to me in public because that's not how you treat someone you love. Your guy is using you at worst and a spoiled baby at best. You deserve better and to keep your hard-earned money. Not the jerk. You're supposed to be his girlfriend, not his sugar mama. And has he taken any steps to get another job? You need to take a step back from this relationship. Not everyone is a high earner, but most people have pride and dignity and respect their partner. And the fact he claims he has written everything down in a notebook, I don't believe it. He is a user. Am I the jerk for not giving my 18-year-old stepson my 4-year-old daughter's money? My husband and I have been together for 7 years, married for 5. He has a son and a daughter from his previous marriage, 18 and 13, and we have a 4-year-old daughter together. Although we have some shared expenses, for the most part we keep our finances separate. Custody is shared 50-50 between my husband and his ex regarding the older kids. Long story short, my oldest stepson graduated a couple weeks ago. He's only ever wanted to go to one school, which happens to be very specialized and hence very expensive university out of state. He applied, was accepted, and got a decent but not phenomenal scholarship from the school itself. Meanwhile, my husband has been encouraging him to look into additional scholarships and potentially ROTC or Air National Guard to help with the remainder of expenses. My husband's company went under a couple of years ago and he is just beginning to recover financially, so paying out of pocket for his son's tuition is simply not an option. Unfortunately for stepson, his focus here lately has been on his new girlfriend and not his academics and scholarships. And unfortunately, he's decided his dad is an idiot when it comes to scholarships and military service and that he'll figure it out on his own. All fine and good, except for the fact that he hasn't figured it out on his own. And sometime here in the next several months, the university he wants to attend is asking for roughly $25,000 in tuition money. After dodging financial conversations and scholarship conversations with my husband for the past 6 or 7 months, he finally came out and asked his dad how he was going to be paying for the tuition because the school is starting to ask for deposits, etc. Husband broke it to him that there is no college fund set aside. Apparently, biological mom has been telling him that there was. I have no idea where she got that idea. Now the whole family is up in arms that my stepson may not be able to go to the school of his choice. Now it's come up that our 4-year-old daughter has a college fund and investment account, because on my computer there is literally a folder on the desktop that has the investment links and logins and paperwork organized. Right now it has about $8,000 in it, all of it from me personally depositing money and all of the little cash gifts my daughter receives for Christmas and birthdays, etc. Because of how badly this whole tuition and university situation has exploded, my husband now thinks we should pay for my stepson's stuff with my daughter's money and he will pay me back. The problem is, I've already given my husband a pile of money for other things and I've never gotten it back, so I said no. Am I the jerk for ruining my stepson's university opportunity? Everyone else seems to think so, but I seem to think this should have been talked about before and dealt with a long time ago. Not the jerk. Protect that money at all costs. Change whatever passwords you need to. Call the bank and ensure that you are the only one who can access it. Not to mention, she won't be ruining his chances. He can take out student loans for this year and work on getting grants and scholarships for the next one. It's probably too late for him to apply for government-backed loans if he's in the US, though OP should look into those, because I don't know that for sure, but at least husband or son could take out private loans to get him through this year. This was the son's mistake, and it isn't unreasonable for him to have to take out the burden of loans to solve it. Though maybe biological mom should be taking out the loans, since she's the one who lied about there being a secret amount waiting for him. Not the jerk. You've given your husband a lot of money that he never paid you back. There is your answer. If you give this money over, you will never see it again. Your husband hasn't sorted out the college fund for his older kids. Why would you trust him to be responsible for your daughter's college fund? $8,000 is also not enough to make a significant difference in a college that is that expensive, so you would just be delaying the inevitable. Son would need to get student loans or reconsider other options. Maybe defer for a year. Your husband has not been honest with his son about the lack of funds and should have been. He would have been more likely to knuckle down if he knew he needed to. Keep your finances separate and make sure your daughter's investment fund cannot be emptied by your husband. The other kid is 13. There's still time to heavily encourage your husband to put money away for her and be clear with her for what the situation is. Well, what do you think? Should OP use her daughter's college fund for her stepson or not? Please let us know. Absolutely not. Why do people always think they're entitled to someone else's money? Everyone gets one. I work at a resort restaurant that serves food to a neighboring poolside bar. Every summer when the bar opens, I'm scheduled to work as a server, taking and running orders to customers. Yesterday was my first big day back as a server, and I was excited. This weekend, the resort was hosting a big golf tournament and a large wedding, so the pool was loaded with people. Imagine a sea of human heads bobbing up and down rather than water, and you can basically imagine what our crowd was like. And these people were thirsty. They wanted everything, and lucky for them, I was here to make their dreams come true. The shift was absolute chaos. People were demanding drinks every 5 minutes, and it was difficult to keep up with, especially with the Texas heat boiling everything in sight. Halfway through, I came up to a group of gentlemen who were part of the golf tournament, important for later. I'm taking a few orders from them when one of their friends, who I'll just call Jeff, cuts in and tells me that he's going to get his credit card and for me to charge all their drinks onto that card. I say okay, and as he's exiting the cool, sunscreen-tainted waters of the pool to get his card, I'm talking to his friends and finishing their orders. A minute later, I hear a loud, piercing whistle echo right above and behind me. Then I hear a bellowing, "Hey!" One by one, heads in the pool start to turn. Their eyes show an expression of either confusion or curiosity as the source of the whistle, our dear friend Jeff, holds his credit card out in the air. He then says, "Everyone gets one, on me, one drink." There's a millisecond of silence before the crowded pool erupts into cheers, victorious whistling, and chanting as Jeff stands there victorious. You know those scenes in movies where a guy says, "Drinks are on me"? Well, to be honest, I never once thought I'd be in the middle of such a scenario. I felt like I had stumbled into a crowded concert, not a pool. My poor introverted little heart was freaking out while my mind was trying to figure out what was going on. As I stand up, Jeff proudly hands me his card, which I take with a fearful and uncertain gaze I kept hidden behind my sunglasses. I retreat to the bar, where my bewildered and unaware coworkers and customers stand questioning what happened. I'm holding Jeff's card, asking what to do, and I'm told to basically do it. So that's what I did. I went around the pool taking orders as normal and keeping the card with me. I stopped by this one guy, Gary, who I recognized as one of the men in the group, and asked him why Jeff did this and if it was truly okay. I honestly thought maybe he was drunk and this was a decision made solely on that, and was worried to charge a poor drunk man with hundreds of dollars of drinks. Gary chuckles and said he was definitely serious and explains that it's a special occasion. Remember how I said these guys were from a golf tournament? Well, Jeff had apparently participated and got a hole-in-one on one of the courses. If you've never played golf or even know anything about it, this is insanely lucky and rare. The odds depend on the kind of hole you're playing on as well as many other conditions, but the average golfer basically has a 1 out of 12,500 chance of getting one. The stars would literally have to align for a golfer to get a hole-in-one. I was honestly kind of shocked to learn this and told Gary that I didn't even think it was possible outside of a mini-golf game. He smiles, looks at me and says, "Well, why do you think he's celebrating it?" I understood immediately, smiled, and got to work. What was originally chaos became insane. I, as well as my other coworker, were constantly flagged down for drinks, even while we were delivering others. We had so many orders for pina coladas that we burned through almost 4 gallons of mix, as well as 2 bottles of rum. One of our bosses actually sent out a server from the inside to help, and the look on his face when he saw the crowd was honestly kind of hilarious. We took almost an hour to take everyone's orders, make them, and deliver them. People were actually pretty patient and found our rushing around to be entertaining. One couple even tipped me a $100 bill in secret because I was going back and forth so often without complaining at all, which they found impressive. They even left a 110% tip on their check as a thanks for the service. I made sure to give them the best hugs a stranger could give another stranger. In the end, Jeff's bill was somewhere around $760, which included a 20% tip we added. I half expected Jeff to be upset in some capacity, but he was actually an awesome guy. He took his massive bill, looked at the total, and just said, "Huh, well, I expected it to be bigger." He laughed, signed, and thanked me for the service. He even patted me on the back before he and his group left for the day. Despite how terrified I was at first, the whole experience was really fun, if I'm being honest. It helped how many people were understanding about it and even patient with us. We're still struggling with understaffing, despite being so far away from lockdown, and yet we're working our butts off to make sure service is nearly perfect for our guests. It's hard, but when people are appreciative and reward us for our hard work, it really helps us. To Jeff, congrats on that hole-in-one. You deserved it. I hope you remember that moment for the rest of your life and never ever forget it. And to the rest of you, whether you work in service or not, Remember to tip your servers and always keep in mind that a lot of us care about you, not just as customers, but people with needs too. Thanks for reading. Am I the jerk if my mom refused to help me take care of my baby while I go back to work? I, 29 female, asked my mom to help me take care of my newborn so I could go back to work once my leave is up. Mind you, my mom is 64, has been a homemaker / stay-at-home mom since 1992, and hasn't been part of the workforce since then. She refused, saying she's too old and that she already raised her kids. She also added that if I really wanted this baby, then maybe I should have thought about staying home like she did to take care of it while my partner goes to work and provides for us like a traditional family, and that if she and my dad were able to work it out, so can we. However, we're just coming out of a lockdown, going into a possible recession, and there is no way me and my partner can make it financially on one income. I make $55K a year, but have $39K in student loans, plus $20K in other debt, credit card, car loan, medical debt on credit. My partner makes about $36K a year and has $5K in credit card debt. I, as the higher breadwinner, have an internal obligation to go back to work, since not only do I have the most at stake, I also make the most to keep our family afloat. We are currently in a small one-bedroom apartment in a metropolitan area and would need to save money to move to a two-bedroom once the baby grows up in a couple of years, as we will need more space. When I explained all the above to my mom, she then proceeded to say that she will charge me $20 an hour for each hour she takes care of the baby, plus late fees if we're late for pickup, and must provide her with a car seat, stroller, bottles, and pretty much double of everything we have at our home to compensate for taking the baby to her house. She will not step foot in my house for her own personal reasons. She's come in once, and I've lived with my partner for 5 years. She's a 15-minute drive away. I want to save money to bring down our debt and don't want to pay her as much nor invest as much in double of everything, as it will spiral into more debt for me and my partner. I'm on the fence about enrolling my baby into an infant daycare instead, as the cost will overall be lower and a little closer to our home. Due to our jobs, we cannot work from home, so we are in desperate need of childcare. Everyone else in our family works full-time, so they cannot help us as they have a similar 9-to-5 schedule. So, am I the jerk for wanting my mom, who again is at home all day long? Trust me, she does not do anything besides watch TV and cook, to take care of my baby for free while me and my partner try to fix our finances? You're the jerk. Sorry to be blunt and rude, but maybe don't have a kid if you can't afford to take care of them. And if your plan was always to go back to work, you should have discussed that with your mom during your pregnancy. Sounds like they can afford the infant daycare and simply wanted their mom to be a certain type of mother and grandmother. The mom is judging OP, and OP is judging her mom right back. My guess is this isn't really about expecting childcare. The mom's not judging OP. She's pointing out that she should have planned better for childcare as opposed to expecting mom to pick up the slack. It's not her mom's responsibility, it's OP's. Maybe OP should spend less time expecting others to do things for her and more time being self-sufficient. You're the jerk. Your mother is under no obligation to babysit for you. Why are you having a kid you don't seem to know what to do with? And why have you not worked out all of this before now? This is the problem a lot of young couples are facing. Many just have a kid to have one, despite the economical struggle most couples will face. Lots of things are costing more: daycare, healthcare, rent, gas, etc. However, salaries are not. Personally, unless I know I can live a comfortable life on top of money for my hobbies, I wouldn't want a kid, especially when you have to factor in the 22-year commitment and at least 18 years of being grounded. You're the jerk. Holy entitlement, Batman. Your mom is in no way obligated to take care of your baby. It's generous of her to be willing to do it for pay, and you have the gall to be mad she won't do it for free? She's entitled to spend her life and free time however she wants. It's not her fault you're in debt and decided to have a baby you can't afford. The only thing she may have done wrong at some point along the line is raise you to be this horribly entitled. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know. I don't see how anyone can afford to have kids these days, to be honest. Whatever you'd usually wear. This happened a long time ago in a friend group of mine. Julia, 27, female at the time of this incident, was having a garden party. Julie was basically a good person, but stressed out over tiny details easily, and when she was throwing a party, she could sometimes get a little, well, whatever the equivalent of a bridezilla is if it's not actually a wedding. In this case, she was driving all of us girls nuts with her vision for the party, which included each of us in a different color, coordinated pastel dress, so that we'd make a collective rainbow and similar antics. Enter Mickey, 24, male. Mickey was, and still is, Julia's best friend. He definitely had a streak of mischief to him, and he was also the only one who could usually make Julia see how ridiculous she was being when she got like this. We asked him to talk to her about it, but he didn't get anywhere this time. Julia just said tiredly, "Please, let me have this. I've been working on it for months." Eventually, we ended up agreeing to wear what she wanted us to wear, so long as she paid for the dresses, which to her credit, she did. Meantime, though, Mickey asked what he was supposed to wear. Now, Julia's vision didn't really include specific plans for how the guys were going to dress, she just wanted them in suits or the like. So when Mickey asked her that, in the middle of a harried moment, she blurted out, "I don't care, just wear whatever you'd normally wear to an outdoor party." Cue malicious compliance. Or at least mischievous compliance, since I don't think there was serious malice involved. See, Mickey worked at a Renaissance fair. When he went to outdoor parties, which he did several times every summer, he attended as part of the staff, and he had a very specific costume he was supposed to wear. And so on the day of the party, he shows up early, along with most of the rest of us, to help Julia set up. And he's wearing a full Renaissance fair jester's costume, complete with cap and bells. To Julia's credit, her first reaction was to laugh her head off. Her second was to swat him. Mickey did set up in the jester's outfit and then finally admitted just before the party that he had a different outfit in his bag if she'd like him to change. He hadn't intended to really mess up her party, only to break her brain a little bit before it started. Julia eventually did tell him it would be nice if he'd go change, but she had to think about it. She admitted she was starting to think it might be worth it just to see how everybody else reacted to this perfectly set up garden party with a pseudo-medieval jester wandering around. Employee screams at a guy who ends up being the company's CEO. This is actually a story from my mom from a couple of years ago. She works for an energy company in the customer service, taking phone calls, answering questions, and sometimes helping fix simple issues. It had started not too long ago, and she was one of the few first employees, so right from the start, she knew pretty much everyone who worked there, including the CEO, who she describes as a very nice, down-to-earth guy who'd always dress pretty casually, so he'd blend in with everyone else pretty easily. After a couple of months, they started hiring more people to work, including this one guy who was apparently very entitled and considered himself better than everyone. Mom and a few others didn't like him because he was apparently arrogant, always tried to correct others only to be wrong himself, kept making the same mistakes, ignored many rules on the floor, and had a huge temper and would scream at anyone who said something he didn't like. The screaming would 99.9% of the time be something along the lines of, "Who the heck do you think you are to insert whatever someone did or said?" Many complained about him, but the manager at the time was too nice or scared or both to actually do something about him. One day, he was apparently playing games on his phone while at the same time talking to a customer and telling him all kinds of random wrong things when the CEO came to check the floor after a meeting. Seeing this guy, he walked up to him and calmly informed him he wasn't allowed to have his phone out while helping a customer, so could he completely focus on said customer for the moment. Cue the guy literally throwing his headset off, jumping to his feet and screaming in his face, "And who do you think you are to tell me how to do my job?" along with stomping his foot at each syllable. The boss stood there for a moment, obviously in shock, and the guy, thinking he had won, smirked all smugly before the boss pulled a, well, boss move. "Well, I just so happen to be the CEO of this company," he screamed back, even copying the foot stomping. The dumb guy lost the smirk and, according to my mom, went from angry bright red to pure white in half a second. The boss then calmly grabbed the headset, which apparently still had the customer, who heard everything, and apologized for what she heard and just asked her what she needed help with, finished in a minute, and before hanging up, once again apologized and told her the other guy was fired so it wouldn't happen again. As soon as he hung up, he told the other guy that he was serious and he'd better gather his stuff. In the end, the annoying employee was gone. The manager got a talk on dealing with bad employees, and someone baked the boss a cake. "My old roommate is demanding I pay her child support, but I'm not even the father. I, 24 male, used to live in a 4-bedroom house with 2.5 other roommates. Bree, 22 female, Jay, 2 male, and Alex, 27 male. Now, Bree is a single mother, and she works in a customer support job, and Alex is a paramedic. Alex and I are not the biological father of Bree's son. I don't know who is, but from what Bree says, he's a jerk. I moved out of the house since I've switched companies and make twice as much as I used to, and have decided to live by myself now. So a few days ago, I got a message from Bree saying that she needs child support money. I thought it was a joke, and I assumed she sent it to the wrong person, so I said, "Lol, girl, wrong number." But then she said, "No, OP, I'm serious. I need child support money right now to pay for blah blah blah." I then told Bree that I will not pay child support money as I'm not her baby daddy, but if she needs to borrow money, then we can work something out, but she will have to pay me back. She then wrote multiple paragraphs of text saying that her son imprinted on me and considers me a father and I need to be a good role model for him. There were other things as well, but it made me want to lose it. I left her on red and immediately messaged Alex about what was going on with screenshots, and he was also bewildered. She hasn't talked to him about the money yet, but I did thoroughly warn him, and he's staying at his sister's house for now. She's still blowing up my phone and threatened a lawsuit for the child support and has been calling me all kinds of names. I feel terrible since I care about her son and he's literally a baby, but I am in no shape his father or have any kinds of responsibility to him. I know she doesn't make much and is living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm open to lending her money, but this makes me feel incredibly weird. Am I the jerk for not giving child support? Important missing info. Did you have a romantic relationship while you were living there? You're the jerk. I had a guy friend just like you who refused to help me out at all with my son. Not only is she a single mom, something you have no idea how difficult it is, but her son sees you as a father figure. Why not just man up and do the right thing? Depriving that kid of basic necessities because you'd rather waste your money on video games does not make you a good person. You may not be her baby daddy, but honestly, you don't even deserve to be. Not the jerk, but I do want to warn you that this happened to my brother. His case was a little different because they did actually date for 2 years, but they never even met until her baby was already a year old. My bro was not the biological father and everyone knew that, but because they lived together for 2 years, after he found out she'd been cheating and left her, she was still able to get court-mandated child support from him. Not the jerk. If she needs money, she needs to go after that kid's biological father. It honestly sounds like she knows you have more money now and she's hoping she can guilt you into paying for things. Let her try to sue you. It will not stand up in court at all. Well, what do you think? Should OP pay child support to his ex-roommate or not? Please let us know. Never tell people that you're making more money at your new job than you were at your old job. It'll save you a lot of headaches. My husband left me. Now his ex-wife wants me to pay the child support he owes her. To make a long story short, I'm female 25, and my husband, male 33, just walked out on us a little over a month ago. He completely just up and abandoned me, our 5-year-old, and our 18-month-old. He has an ex-wife in her 30s, and they have a 12-year-old daughter from their marriage. No formal custody involved, but we would usually get my stepdaughter every other weekend, and my husband would pay his ex the child support every month on the 1st when he got paid. My husband's excuse for just leaving us in the dust was that I am damaged goods, and he couldn't hack it being a father anymore. He didn't feel any joy in parenting and wanted to live a free life, so he changed his number, blocked me on all social media, changed all of his passwords, and told his friends and family not to speak to me. It turned my entire life upside down. I've been a stay-at-home mom since our eldest was born, got my degree, and we talked about me going back to the workforce once she entered kindergarten this year in the fall. But it was nothing set in stone. My husband literally gave me an allowance every week to buy groceries, pay bills, buy diapers, anything else the kids needed, etc. I would always stash a little bit away, but he definitely was the breadwinner in our relationship. My husband's ex-wife messaged me earlier today asking if we could talk about something serious. I asked her what was up. She asked if I could pay her for the amount of child support my husband usually gives her every month on the 1st. I curiously asked her how much because my husband never told me exactly the amount he gave her. I never really thought it was any of my business. She told me she needed the $900 he usually gives her because both she and her new husband are struggling to pay their bills, and they rely on that child support to make their rent payment, and they were behind. I told her I couldn't do it because truthfully I can't. I'm still waiting to get an appointment so I can receive government benefits because with what little money I did have saved up, it's gone now after paying every single bill by myself. To keep a roof over mine and my kids' heads, make sure they're fed, etc. There is and will be no way I can spare almost $1,000 to my husband's ex-wife. She blew up my phone, called me names, said that she can understand why he left me, etc., threatening to keep my stepdaughter away from me and my kids because we are bad influences, and that my stepdaughter is going to struggle because I can't hand over the money I literally don't even have. I tried apologizing, but it was no use. It just ended with her calling me more names. Am I the jerk here? I feel horrible that my husband has left us both high and dry, but I also have to look out for my own kids. I'm literally skipping meals to make sure they have enough to eat, and I'm scrambling to figure out how I'm going to survive without my husband's help now. Part of me is really conflicted, but I can't give his ex-wife what I don't have. Not the jerk. And you said no formal custody? So does that mean no child support agreement for ex-wife and stepdaughter? If so, file first. Child support is allocated in order of who files first, so you should file before she does. Get a divorce lawyer immediately and take him to the cleaners. Not the jerk. Honestly, I'm confused why the ex-wife would ask you and why you would even debate it internally. This is a no-brainer here. Your soon-to-be ex-husband needs to handle his responsibilities. The audacity of her to even ask you is off the charts. OP. I guess because whenever we would have my stepdaughter, I'd be the one to take her shopping, new manicure, etc. My husband would pay for it, but she never wanted him to take her out, just me. I guess her mom just had it in her head that I had a secret stash of money somewhere. She knew I've been a stay-at-home mom ever since our eldest was born. Lawyer here. Absolutely not your responsibility, not the jerk. Your husband is, and she is, for putting this on you. Assuming you are in the USA, 1. You need a custody order with your husband. Otherwise, in many states, he could take the kids with them and not return home. 2. You need a child support order. Many government benefits won't be paid without it. 3. You need a status quo order. Will prevent him from dissipating and hiding assets or making major changes until you can get divorced. 4. You need to talk to a lawyer about your relationship with your stepdaughter and what visitation rights, if any, you have with her. That varies by state. Do this before anything else. Yes, even the government benefits. You need that SQ order in place. Am I the jerk for telling my husband he'll be lucky if his oldest daughter ever speaks to him again? I married my husband 3 years ago. He was divorced and previously widowed. He has 2 daughters, Annie, who is now 26 from his first marriage, and Amy, who is 17 from his second marriage. My husband told me about his late wife, his ex-wife, the issues he had as a blended family when he remarried, and Annie was not on board with him remarrying, and the fact that this strain ended his second marriage. He was also honest that Annie never forgave him for remarrying and never wanted anything to do with Amy or him after she turned 18. What he did not tell me was the major role he played in all of this. I found this out 3 weeks ago at a dinner with his extended family. The story, as I now know it. When Amy was around 5 years old, she took a special interest in a necklace that belonged to his late wife. My husband gave the necklace to Amy, which upset Annie because all her mother's possessions were meant to go to her. My husband told Annie that it was just one item and she needed to get over it because Amy was entitled to have something too. Annie had brought up that it was the piece her mother wore the most. My husband told her that it was a special gift to give to her sister, that she was being selfish. His ex-wife told her that her mother would want someone as special as your sister to have a piece of her as well. Annie never got over it. She tried to take it from Amy and was punished. The last time she saw any of them, she told them all to buzz off. Amy still has the necklace too. She doesn't even take care of it and talks about it as if her dad bought it for her. I was shocked. I never would have expected my husband to be that way. He was very unapologetic about it and told me Annie would have to get over it someday. I told him he should be ashamed of himself, that he should have allowed Annie's mother's possessions to be hers, to do with as she chose, that Amy did not give a crap about his late wife or the significance of these items, but Annie would have. I told him he will be incredibly lucky if his daughter ever speaks to him again, and I would not blame her if she never did. He was furious I judged him. His family said I should take my husband's side over his daughter, who I don't even know, except for the nephew and niece who told the whole story, because they also think my husband did a messed up thing. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your husband doesn't understand it. He likely lost Annie forever, her love and respect, and his place as her father in her heart. It was not the necklace itself, but the meaning of the necklace. Love, respect, care, her mom's memory. I'd be more concerned about it if I were OP. Her husband hid the part that showed he was responsible for the disastrous relationship with his daughter and made it seem like it was his daughter's problem. I don't doubt that in his mind he thinks he didn't do anything wrong, but that speaks loudly about who he is and how he resolves things. Also, the "you should support me because I'm your husband" is total crap. I hope you don't have kids. That'll make the inevitable divorce a lot trickier. OP. Not with my husband. I have 2 adult kids, but the divorce won't affect them really. Am I the jerk for not asking my friend before giving away a chair from our table? I, male 46, was out on Saturday with my friend, female 38, at a pub. There were 4 chairs at our table. One guy at the table behind ours turns around and asks us if they can have one of our empty chairs. I get eye contact with him because he is in direct line of sight. Since clearly, to me, there were 2 available chairs at our table, I answer, yes, that is okay, without asking my friend about it. My friend then confronts me about the fact that I did not ask her before answering him. She said that by doing so, then I am answering for her and she doesn't like it. Even though there were 2 empty chairs at our table, she feels that I should have asked her if it was okay before answering him, and that would have been good communication between us. She said that there could be many reasons why maybe she wouldn't agree to giving away one of the chairs. Like for example, that I wouldn't know if maybe she had invited other people to come and join us without me knowing about it. It was late in the evening and only the 2 of us had spent the evening together. I felt that the situation was obvious and that the answer would be obvious, so I didn't even think about asking her first. I think I might be the jerk because by not asking my friend first, that I'm not considerate enough about if it's okay with her. Am I the jerk? Edit. Full story. There was an instance a couple of weeks back where a guy wanted to join our table and I said, that's okay, without asking her. She confronted me then, and in that instance I was very understanding and could understand her point of view very well. I even commented, it will not happen again. This time she commented, again, you are answering for me. I said to her that I thought this instance was a very different type of situation and shouldn't be compared like that. She did not have any understanding about the situations being different. And there was another time where she suspected that I had answered for her about if and when we were joining a friend. I demonstrated that I had in fact not answered for her by showing her the text message I had sent to our friend. You're the jerk. How hard is it to ask her before speaking on her behalf? Why is it that so many of you guys get your kicks from trying to act all mighty and powerful? Honestly, I don't even know why she's wasting her time with someone like you. If I'm out on a date and dude tries to answer for me, pull out my chair or any of that 50s crap, it's a huge red flag and I know I won't be letting him take me out again after this. I do run the bill up as high as possible though, since we're already there. When will you guys learn that it's time to stop acting like cavemen? She deserves so much better. You're the jerk. This sounds like an ongoing issue with you that she has made you aware of more than once. It's something that bothers her either because of bad past experiences or it's just a pet peeve, but it is simple enough to just ask her quickly before answering something that affects both of you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his friend? Please let us know. Sometimes I think people in these stories will be friends with just about anyone. Wasn't made redundant like everyone else in the company, so kept showing up to work until the end to do nothing. This story is from June 2012, a week or so short of 10 years ago. I have generalized my exact work for anonymity. This story takes place in Australia, where we have very stringent laws around employment, firing, hiring, redundancies, maternity, etc. Little bit of background. I had started working for this particular company in March 2011. I was hired basically on the spot once I demonstrated my knowledge of the product that I would be working on, and started 2 days later because of a deadline that had to be met. I had a very specific contract for what I did. I was thrown in the deep end. A sleepless 7 days followed, but by the end I managed to do a decent job on the first of many products. 2 months after I started, my direct boss, general manager, was let go and not really replaced properly, but a consultant took over their responsibilities. I should also add that majority of operations were in Australia, while a smaller team operated in the UK, which is also where the CEO was based, despite 80 to 90% of products coming out of our office. Towards the third quarter of 2011, the CEO's contract ended and not renewed, so the hunt began for a new CEO who was eventually found and began working also in the UK location. After a very busy 2011, hiring approximately 30 new employees and launching a bunch of new products, business was booming. Until the second week of January 2012. By this point, upper management couldn't stay on top of everything, bringing in the COO of the parent company to oversee operations in Australia, because we had a lot going on, but the CEO was based in the UK and new. At this point, we had a group meeting where we learned the future of the company and that operations in Australia would cease on June 30th, 2012, end of financial year in Australia. This was followed by management explaining that everyone, except a handful of people, would be made redundant with payouts. The handful who would remain will instead be made redundant after finishing their project at the end of 2012. So over the next 5 months, as operations were slowly winding up and people started to exit the company, I'd lined up a few job interviews. One of these was my dream job, based in Europe, working in the exact field I wanted to be in. I kept this quiet, telling only a handful of my closest friends at my still current job. The recruitment process took quite a few weeks, many late-night Skype interviews, general chats. It was a big job and a massive interview process. And towards the end of May, I'm still in the running for this dream job. And by this point, pretty much everyone knows, wishing me luck. Around comes the start of June, and everyone starts to get their redundancy letters, giving them 28 days of official notice outlining their pay schedules and all legal entitlements. When I say everyone, I mean everyone except me. I find this very strange, but quickly realize it's because if I hand in my notice, I won't be entitled to a payout, and the company gets to save a few $1,000s. This is where my malicious compliance kicks in. I keep quiet and don't say anything. By about the second week of June, I find out that I didn't get my dream job, and I tell one other person, but make sure they don't tell anyone else. Fast forward to the last week of June, and now there's just 7 employees, including me, left in the office, alongside the GM, COO, and CFO. Everyone except me has packed up their desks, and at this point, just showing up to basically be social and reminisce. On the second last day, I run into the COO. Remember, he was from the parent company, brought in to oversee the winding up of operations, next to my desk, and he goes, "You must be saddened that tomorrow is the last day." Casually, I respond with, "Oh, is it? I know it'll be quiet, but I didn't realize it's my last day." He takes a closer look at my desk, still not packed up, has the most confused look on his face and responds with, "Yeah, it's everyone's last day. Why wouldn't it be your last?" "Oh, I never got a redundancy letter." At this point, I can see the expression on his face go from, "Huh?" to, "Oh no." And the hope that I would get a different job and resign so I don't get redundancy entitlements, among everything else going on between the GM, COO, and CFO, they forgot to issue me an official redundancy notice. At this point, he realizes all this and goes, "Oh, come and see me in my office in 30 minutes. Half an hour later, I go to his office. He's sitting there with the CFO by his side, but also kind of behind him. There are a few papers on the desk. I sit down and he starts, "Sorry we didn't do this properly at an earlier point, but here is all your redundancy paperwork. The first piece of paper is the official letter." I pick it up, start reading, and the first thing that catches my eye is the date. It had been backdated to 27 days previously. Now this is the 2-copy letter that needs to be signed by both employer and employee. I put it down and go, "That's not today's date." He gets flustered and responds with, "Sorry, we forgot to get it to you, but the notice was issued on that day." Me, "It might have been issued then, but this is the first time I'm seeing it, and you'll note it hasn't been signed by me." Him, "Yes, but you knew this was coming." Me, "I did, but I assumed I'd be retained for longer because I wasn't given official notice." Him, "What do you want us to do now?" Me, "Put today's date on it and I'll sign it." Him, "But legally, we need to wrap up operations before the end of the month. We can't do that." Me, "You could try to fire me instead, but I don't think Fair Work Commission would be satisfied with your reason of me not wanting to sign a falsified redundancy letter." By this point, he's very flustered. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing in my head. Him, "Okay, let me change this for you." He disappears, comes back with another copy with the correct date. "Okay, here you go." Me, "I'm not signing this yet." Him, "Why not?" Me, "Well, I've got 28 more days of legal employment now, which means I'm owed an extra day and a bit in annual leave in my final pay schedule." He looks at the CFO, and the CFO looks at him and nods in agreement. He changes my payout schedule, adding another day of annual leave to it, prints it out and hands it to me. I carefully look over everything. It's all in order now. I sign the paperwork, we both get copies. Him, "So, what will you be doing here for the next 28 days? Me, "Nothing. I'm not coming back after today." Him, "But you are legally employed for another 4 weeks. We can't be paying you for nothing. You should help out the IT guy and pack up some boxes." Me, "There's nothing in my contract about packing up boxes, so I won't be doing that. Also, if you read my contract, it says I'm employed to work on this one specific project only, and any other outside work of this needs to be agreed on separately. And since you sold my project to the competition yesterday, and it's no longer at this company, I have no further contractual obligations to fulfill." By this point, the CFO is barely holding in his laughter. Him: "Well, that's not fair. We have to pay you an extra month for nothing." Me: "That's not my problem. My contractual obligations have been fulfilled. I'm going to pack up and go home at 5 p.m. Him: "Okay, please make sure it's not before 5 p.m. I get back to my desk and pack it up in less than 5 minutes, put all my personal belongings in a box, and just sit around doing nothing. One of my colleagues, who is remaining for a few more months, comes and asks me, "What was all that about?" I explain everything in detail. He lets out the biggest booming laugh, goes to his office, closes the door, and continues laughing. 15 minutes later, the CFO comes over and goes, "You don't have to stay until the end of the day. You can take off whenever you want." And this is the story of how I got an extra month's pay due to management's incompetence. Am I the jerk for calling mother-in-law out on her allergies? For as long as I've been with my husband, mother-in-law has been claiming she's deathly allergic to egg, ginger, and she can't have a lot of salt in her meals. So I've been actively avoiding these ingredients in meals I cook. She's even had an allergic reaction to foods she suspects have those ingredients. About a week ago, I hosted a dinner for sister-in-law's birthday and made sister-in-law her favorite salted caramel mousse. It's easily one of the best things I make. This recipe has taken me years to make it perfectly, and I keep it a huge secret, but it has a lot of egg and a lot of salt in it. So keeping in line with mother-in-law's dietary requirements, I make her a simple chocolate caramel mousse with no eggs or salt in it. Dessert rocks around, and I bring out a tray of the salted caramel mousse, put it on the table, and tell mother-in-law, "I'll be back with your mousse in a second. Don't eat this one, it's salted caramel." I go to the kitchen, come back, and mother-in-law has already taken a salted caramel mousse, which was meant for me, and is shoveling it down her face as quickly as possible. I yell, "No, mother-in-law, it has egg and salt in it." She keeps eating and says, "I know, but everyone always says it's so nice and I wanted to try it. A little bit won't hurt." She devours the entire mousse, which wasn't a small portion, and asks if there's any more because it was so yummy. I tell her no, there isn't any more. But what's going on? I thought she was allergic to those ingredients. She tells me, well, she's technically not allergic, but she doesn't like the taste of egg. It makes her sick, so she just tells people she's allergic, and that way people don't make her food with those ingredients. She still eats cakes, pies, etc., where she can't taste the ingredients. She just doesn't like to eat them if she can taste them. I tell her she shouldn't say she's allergic if she's not. There's a big difference between not liking something and being allergic to something. I've always gone out of my way to avoid those ingredients in her food and even purchase separate bowls and spoons to cook her food in order to avoid cross-contamination. I've been substituting ingredients for years to ensure that I'm not feeding her something she's allergic to. She laughs and says it's not a big deal. Lots of people do it. She also told me I'm being a drama queen. I told her it is a big deal. She could have just told me she didn't like it. It would have saved me a fortune in substituting ingredients or making separate meals. Everyone at the table agreed that claiming to have an allergy when you're not allergic is a jerk thing to do. She sent me a message yesterday saying that I shouldn't have called her out in front of everyone. Now, no one will take her seriously when she says she's allergic. I replied with, "Well, you're not allergic to them, so it doesn't really matter, does it?" She texted my husband that she's not coming over unless I apologize to her for calling her out in front of everyone because I made her feel bad. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She lied, got caught in that lie. She ate the mousse in front of everyone, then gets all upset that you called her out on her lie? And now she wants you to apologize? For what? I'm sorry you got caught lying? Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law, on the other hand, is a huge jerk. This undermines everyone who has a real food allergy. It's expensive and time-consuming to accommodate, and for some people, food safety is critical. Here she just claims allergy to have her preferences met wherever she goes, and she will pick and choose when the allergy excuse suits her occasion. Not okay. For anyone who has an actual life-threatening allergy, she deserves to be called out. Would I be the jerk if I leave for a hotel until he gets back? My husband has a bad habit of springing things on me last minute and expecting me to roll with it. He often claims he just found out about it, but when pushed, will admit that things have been in the works for a long time and he just didn't notice or neglected to inform me, etc. One recurring surprise has to do with his work. He tends to spring work trips or events on me last minute and or will modify trips already in process to extend them, change the terms, etc. In isolation, it might not be a huge deal, but we have kids that I'm left to take care of. And this is the biggest factor for me. He frequently leaves his relatives behind at the house with me. I do not like this. I'm very introverted and private, and while I recognize he likes having his family around, and I do my best to make peace with that while he is around, I find it unreasonable to leave them behind with me time and time again while he's off traveling. Most especially because he knows I value my space, don't particularly get along with his relatives, and because over time it has become such a consistent thing that we've had huge fights about it, so he has no way to pretend he thinks I'm okay with it. Fast forward to this week. He has multiple relatives coming in from out of town. This has been in the works for a month or so, and they intend to stay for a prolonged period of time. I've had some nerves about this for the above-mentioned reasons, but have been doing my best to be supportive of it because I know how much family means to him, and at least when he's here with them, there is a decently comfortable dynamic. There was also no mention of him having any upcoming travel, so I felt somewhat at ease, until the day before they were scheduled to arrive. While talking, he suddenly brings up how he'll be away next week, just a few days after they arrive. He first said he just found out, but when I said it's unreasonable for his work to demand he leave on such short notice, he confessed it was planned a month ago. He swears he just missed the invite, but given his history, I'm betting he just didn't want to tell me. So now he's about to leave me with virtually no notice with a number of his relatives, most of whom I don't even know. And the one relative I do know well, I do not get along with. I told him if he leaves me like this, I'm going to a hotel while he's gone. He responded that I would offend his relatives by doing so, and therefore I can't. I'm tired of being pushed into uncomfortable situations, and I'm considering making this my hill to die on and leaving anyways. Clearly, just talking to him about me not being okay with this pattern is going nowhere, and I don't see how it's reasonable that he keep backing me into uncomfortable situations. But he is right that it's obviously going to look shady at best and rude at worst if I just leave. But given that I was bamboozled into this situation to begin with, does that really make me the jerk? Not the jerk. You contact the relatives and tell them that unfortunately his job has made a last-minute change and hubby isn't going to be here. They need to cancel the trip or make alternative sleeping arrangements. Put your foot down. He knows what he's doing. OP should leave before the day they're supposed to arrive and hubby is supposed to leave with phone switched off. That would leave hubby in the position of either canceling the trip or calling his relatives, if not both. Why should she be the one who carries the bad news? Not the jerk. Make this your hill to die on and go to the hotel. Look, you're going to get a lot of comments here about red flags, etc. I'm not going there because it's not part of this post. Assuming your husband is otherwise a great and respectful partner, then I get it. Everyone has their totally selfish streak, a blind spot that is just so frustrating. As an imperfect partner ourselves, we cut it some slack, but you are allowed to reach a breaking point. He triple whammied you. He invited family to stay for a prolonged trip, knowing you don't love it. He deliberately lied to you about his work travel, which you have previously asked him not to do, and he continues to do. And now he wants to leave you alone in a situation where you are viscerally uncomfortable, that he himself created. Stand your ground, and when your husband says his family will be offended, explain that they will be, but that you expect them to be less so after he tells them that he has a long history of lying to you and springing things on you at the last minute, that you have expressed this to him many times and he did it again. And now you are understandably upset, and they are paying the price for his behavior. The truth shall set you free. He just needs to man up and take the hit. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.